All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Chapter 4, Session 1 of the Imris Saga. I'm joined by my lovely guest. Marissa is here, but they will be actually on a little bit later. I just want you to know that I kept you guys muted up until now, so I did not catch those bits.
Oh man, they didn't get to hear about the noodle incident?
No.
Oh, you guys gotta hear about the noodle incident.
I cast Disintegrate on Sean. In real
Entirely
life.
valid. I choose
Wait,
to
what's
fail
the
the saving
material
throw.
component?
I'm just gonna
A
say
lodestone? I don't have a lodestone.
the word fuck. That's my
You
only
surely
Yeah,
have
my
a. It just
lodestone.
means like a magnetized rock, right? You surely have something.
I don't have a magnetized rock. What do you think I'm made of? Magnets? All rocks?
You don't have any fridge magnets?
So are
No.
juggalos exempt from the spell because they don't know how fucking magnets work?
That's not how. You
I
can't
anyone
opt
here
out of
get
being
that joke?
targeted by. Wait, can I opt out of being targeted by a spell in D&D by not accepting the
No,
material component's existence?
That's like saying,
Although
well,
it's
I
not-
don't believe in gravity, therefore gravity doesn't function on me.
So
That-
this gets into how we view magic, but how strongly you believe it and whether or not you have a magical source backing you up would bend reality to suit your needs.
Also, a lodestone isn't necessarily just any magnetic piece of metal. It's a naturally occurring metal that is already magnetized, or capable of becoming a magnet.
All of these things are answered by the fact that it's in my component pouch. Or my arcane focus. I forgot to decide which one Keller has. I think it's a component pouch.
Welcome to the stream, everybody. We're
How's
doing
everybody-
Also-
great.
how's everybody doing?
Also, technically, in the world that Andrew created, fate affects you differently if you believe hard enough in things, so maybe you can believe that you're immune to disintegrate. And then fate will weave that to be true.
So you can,
Yeah,
if you,
that's not really what he meant, but sure.
Yeah, Keller knows that, but it's funny if Alvaron's like, I believe that I can't be affected.
You can believe as hard as you want. Also, I believe if I paint my ship red, it goes faster.
Now we're getting
you are
to some
functionally just playing a Warhammer 40k orc.
I think you have to paint the sails red,
Exactly.
because that's what's
Here's the thing:
locomoting
Ramona
your
gets
boat.
me more than any of you, and that's what
I
I love about.
understood. I'm not degenerate enough to call out.
No. You might
reference.
understand me, Andrew. You might understand me. Ramona gets me. That's the difference right here. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
There's
Nah.
memorization, but there's not comprehension.
Right.
Some things are trash and shouldn't be picked back up.
Speaking of which, what? I don't know.
Oh, weird segue.
That's not the
Speaking of which,
segue
I'm
you
garbage.
wanted
Let's
to
go.
It's your stream, man.
Last week, no, it's fine. Last week on the
Speaking of trash, y'all remember the game I ran last week? Jesus Christ.
There was a reunion. All the characters got back together a year and a day after their party. Well, some of them met up again, but
Great, I can get both hands in now. I changed my camera so that I could be upset.
there was a banquet held at Mael'Arath, Uba's castle, whereupon everybody from the original party attended except for Will, who was replaced or maybe substituted by Calandra. Now, an adult after some timey-wimey shenanigans in the Astral Sea.
Yeah, stuff that Keller hasn't explained and now is like a little bit overshadowed by the literal like personification of fate appearing. I guess also some stuff happened to me. Whatever.
There was it was brushed over a little bit, I will say. The banquet began, and you were also joined by Sylvarin's new apprentice, Maraveth, another member of the Gathite tribe in which they're from. But the most surprising guest of all was a man who called himself Farn, who seemed to be some kind of avatar of prophecy or fate. He asked if he could be let in, at which point there was a little bit of debate, but Uba decided to show hospitality. He had dinner with you. You asked him various questions before he recited prophecy to you all, and promptly left, leaving you somewhat flat-footed, we'll say. Um, and that's actually where we're picking up from. So the food has been finished by the time that this man is taking his leave. You could still hang out at the banquet hall if you like, but the servants are beginning to clean up plates and everything like that as you kind of mull over what just occurred. So I'm just gonna go down real quick with the people that are here. So Baron, what's going on in that noggin?
Post the prophecy.
Yeah.
Silver, and they're still all at the table, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Uba's probably standing, directing some of the servants a little bit, but everybody's in the room.
All right. So what is visibly going on with Silverin is that he is just kind of checking in that Maraveth has gotten his chance to eat, that he's remaining at the table, and he's just watching the group. Somebody who's familiar with him, everybody in the room that's traveled with him for so much time would notice that his hand is sitting against, but not quite touching, his alpenstock, just kind of close. He is up, no longer seated. He is still holding his wine goblet as he just kind of circulates a little bit. But otherwise, he's not talking and letting anybody in quite yet on what's going on in his noggin.
How is Alondra with this very interesting experience in which you asked a lot of questions?
She's basically just staring at her spell book. She's twirling in her right hand the rainbow quill that she's been using to write, and every so often is making some really quick, sharp gestures where she's connecting ideas together, and then she's starting to write her as almost as if to write the findings of an interview, where she's like, I've done the interview now, what did I learn from that? And she's writing that at the base of that page. But she's largely not paying attention to anything else. She's still in the what did I just learn and how is that relevant to things point of view. She's she's her immediate instinct was I should ask Will for help, but she didn't prepare sending, so she can't rely on that. And is admonishing herself internally that her first instinct was to ask for help. But then it's going back, but it's but this is a thing that is beyond what should be expected of me to not go for outside help for. But I should work it out by myself. Will won't know anything. Maybe I can borrow books off Medea. Where can I get outside help from that isn't me getting told off for asking for outside help?
Speaking of Medea, as this thought kind of crosses Lander's mind, what is going on with them?
Two things. I think I'm going to be honest. There's somebody who's perennially a little bit more distracted than they were, and so as they're thinking about this fate and the idea of being able to create events to happen, their brain has made the connection of they're wondering I wonder what things that the people I take care of are attempting to conjure in reality, and they're imagining themselves in a dunce hat in the future. And then they've also got the image of in their head, they're sort of trying to figure out what are the implications of this? What does that riddle mean? Why were we told the riddle in specific? And their mind has also raced to who do I know that's good at riddles? Will is gone. I don't know anybody else who's good at riddles. This is an issue. Maybe Kella is good at riddles. And they're trying to sort through the catalog of people they know who would maybe be okay at handling this puzzle.
Right. Thinking about what to do next. While Alvaron thinking what?
Alvaron is sitting at the table, in the course of everything that's occurred, and reaches into a pouch and pulls out, if anyone's close enough to tell, a set of whalebone dice that he's picked up since he's been at sea. And the sailor savvy of them would note that these are specifically for liar's dice, a game often played aboard ships. And he jumbles them in his hand, empties his cup of whatever he's drinking, tosses them into the cup, and does the equivalent of the shuffle with the whalebone dice. And sets it down on the table with the dice obscured under the cup. Looks at this prophet and thinks very, very hard, and then checks his hand under the cup. And just like that, brings the cup back over, tucks the dice back away into a pocket. And to Alvaron, it is sailor's superstition, but using liar's dice to tell the truth of someone or something, especially by a holy person, has a little bit of weight. And I would like Alvaron to, with that, make an insight check, just to check a little bit more into the feel of everything that's going on right now. He's not going for anything specific. This is just what the dice are telling him.
Would you say that he was discreet about that, or was he just very open about what he was doing?
He was open. It wasn't like a hidden thing, but he wasn't doing it in a flashy way. It was, these are my dice, check, roll, check them, and slide them back under. Almost like someone, think of the social equivalent if someone took a tarot deck out of their pocket, shuffled quickly, pulled a card, checked it, and put it back away. Like, it's not flashy, it's not for the room, it's for him. But if you were paying attention to him, you would know that that's what he was doing.
Yeah. Silverin is kind of watching, but doesn't move from where he's kind of standing adjacent to Maraveth, offering him like something with a bit of spice to it, with a mild warning that it's not like what they've eaten in the mountains. But he's watching Alvaron, kind of meeting his gaze, looking down at the cup, and then back up at him.
Andrew, are you okay with that insight check? Or would you like something else?
No, if you want to make an insight check for that, that's fine. I would accept probably that or religion, but it's not really religious, I don't think.
Not particularly.
I'm not sure you're able to glean much out of the toss of the dice. I will let you kind of know how liar's dice works, but not really, so I'll let you the outcome.
So just a quick rundown. Liar's dice, like having multiples of something is very good, and having multiples of a higher level is very good. So all of you sit down around a table and you shake and check under your cup, and you say, I have two fours. 2 4s is very good, but out of 6 dice, 3 3s is better than 2 4s. 2 6s is probably better than anything else, as you're going around and whatever luck you might have. So I imagine if he's not getting much out of this roll, I love to think that he checks under it and it came up 1 2 3 4 5 6. You got nothing, but you got a very particular kind of nothing. So then, Stolgren, the face you probably see is one of just, this is just old. This is sailors talk. Let's see what fucking. What are we after that? And then. Ramona, do you have something you want to share with the class?
Has this ever happened to Alvaron before?
Like rolling that in liar's dice?
Yeah.
No.
What did you roll? Just 5 different numbers?
Basically. Yeah, it's nothing, but it's a strange way to roll nothing.
Not even a straight. Just a very common outcome on rolling 5 dice. to get no dice.
Ooh, the odds rolling exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, you have 6 dice in your Liar's Dice Cup? Well,
Yeah.
that's not right either.
Oh,
It's a
dear
5
God.
die game.
You
This is why
been
people
a
shouldn't
bag
use
of
gambling
holding
games
for
while I'm
20
listening.
That is so much more
And Imris,
impressive
they
to
use
somehow
6
roll
dice.
6 numbers out of 5 dice.
I was gonna say
Maybe
these are
that's why
very
you get
special
nothing,
whalebone dice.
because you put one too many dice in the cup.
Yeah, it's like,
It's
this isn't my
Immersian.
die.
It's Immersian Liar's Dice. It could be a little different, right?
It could be a better game than actual Liar's Dice for gambling, because that's a bad gambling game.
Mm.
I will go back to being muted and typing up Keller's thesis.
Get in the comments, everyone watching. Get in the comments.
Yeah, come
Put
at me
light
if you
at
think
that.
Liar's Dice is a good gambling game.
Personally,
Never
don't care
was
that
fun.
much. I'm
Anyway,
gonna sip my lemonade and
so as you were all kind of having these thoughts and about these things, one of the servants, since you were all kind of just continue to sit at the buffet table, as there comes out up to Uba and says, would you like us to bring you some coffee, perhaps? Sitting here still. Yeah, sure. That sounds fine. Yeah. After which everyone is asked for their orders of coffee, which are given to you quite swiftly.
Keller requests a triple shot in an espresso cup.
Does caramel exist in Imris yet?
Surely.
Okay.
Somebody's fucked up cooking sugar before, so
If
yeah,
not,
caramel
they
must
have,
exist.
a very sweet molasses. Something
Mhm.
Sand-based caramel.
I regret this line of questioning, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Silverin just orders for himself and Maraveth.
Alvaron orders an Americano, a watered down coffee, because that's what he's gotten used
They
to
all,
in the austerity of a ship.
Disgusting.
the server looks at you with a mild face of slight contempt, like, very well.
Please bring me my steak well done.
I think
With ketchup.
Medea's is probably just like straight black coffee with like 2 shots of caramel.
All of your orders are given. Will, as the coffee is coming out, kind of go backwards.
Did you say Will?
Sorry, I did say Will. Kella, excuse me.
Just checking.
As your coffee is being brought out, I'm having a moment of you've been back in real space in the material plane for a month, but it's still been many years really where you only had 2 other people function to talk to. I think we kind of go back in time. This is about halfway through your period of being trapped, say, this this bubble. You are in what, for all intents and purposes, appears to be a kind of wizard's tower. Clearly, it is made mostly of magic, but you are on the bottom floor studying in a what looks like a small library. As you are doing so, Will is not currently here. They're busy doing something, but Cal is kind of sitting over, watching you read. And I'm just curious, at the 5-year mark, what is this Kella thinking about their situation? What do they feel about it?
So this version of Keller is in that like awkward growth point of being like taller than is comfortable for her, but like otherwise very, very thin and gangly. Nutrition is not that easy to get in the Astral Sea either. So she's at a point where like a normal teen would be rebellious, but how do you rebel against being trapped in a magical space with two people that are genuinely very supportive and one who's extremely apologetic about the entire situation? But she's frustrated. She started to get a hold on some more significant magical abilities. I think she's probably capable of casting like dispel magic now, and she's at a point where she's like, if I'm just going to die in this bubble, I don't care anymore. So where she would normally be studying and is genuinely throughout most of the 10 years very good at studying, but there's a period in the middle here where she's not studying, but she has a book open, and every so often she casts a furtive glance back at Kala and then flips a page forward, and there's a card that she has crafted out of a book that she decided was pointless folly. It's like a book about fictional stories, and they were like easily disproven by other historical things in this library. And she's like drawing a very intricate symbol on this card. But the book that she's reading is probably specifically about trying to dispel particularly strong magic, because that is the avenue that Will and Kala are currently suggesting they need to go down in this space. But she eventually just like lets out this heavy sigh and closes the book as loudly as you could close a book while still being respectful to said book.
Ella, I think, looks up from her own reading, and we can see that she is not particularly aged physically, but definitely has an older look in their eyes. Yes, dear?
It's just, if we're never going to get out, I could be studying anything. You could be teaching me how to pick locks, or I could be spending all day playing an instrument. And instead, I'm reading and trying to learn how to break something that you and Will haven't been able to break. So what's the point? Maybe studying is stupid. She like covers her own mouth at the words of that studying is stupid.
Cal gives her like a frank look and says, do you really think that we're never going to get out of here?
Well, I might get out of here, but you two are old.
You haven't really met an old person in 5 years. And you never really met anybody who was really old. Not like Will. And I think she, if you'll allow me, she does notice the card that you've made. She says, would you rather be making things like that?
Keller like looks at where it's sticking out of the book as it was dislodged as she closed it, and is like, that was a stupid thing that I let slip. She says, no, this one's magic. And she like puts her hand near it and just like levitates the card towards her as it's like the start of her tarot deck. And I was doing it kind of because I thought it would be helpful. But maybe you could, can we like spar a bit for like a week? Can we just do rapier training?
That's what you want. I know we've been in here for a long time now. Studying is what I know. The less scrupulous things that I've been teaching you. But I think I know you've been frustrated lately. I have to ask, I think you're old enough now. What is it that you want to do? Really? You want to be an adventurer, but time and minds change. And What are you
Kella,
going to do when you can't ask me, Will, what you should do?
Kella has kind of spun a chair around to look at Kella by this point, and kind of throws her head back semi-dramatically, and her hair, which is now very long, much longer than it is in the present day, like cascades back over the back of this wooden chair. And she just breathes out and she says, well, assuming that we get out of here at some point, I suppose being an adventurer is boring when you're already as strong and understand magic as much as I do. I will be, no doubt, the preeminent apprentice that has ever existed, so it would stand that I should become the best wizard that has ever existed.
Well, what does the best wizard who ever existed have to do?
Understand disciplines outside of magic through the week-long rapier training.
Very well. And
Also, I think
she
by the
actually-
5...
Sorry,
Go ahead. I was going to say, by the 5-year mark, I don't think Will or Kella are telling Kella what to do anymore. It's like Kella is by choice mainly studying,
Right.
but is choosing to just imagine this structure that is forcing her into it because it's like a way for her to rebel against something.
Yeah, and I think Kala is definitely aware of this, and they maybe have even had a similar conversation in the past. This is sort of just repeating itself. But as you mentioned, this rapier training, a dagger passes by your cheek, produced out of Kala's sleeve.
Kella smiles and is like standing up immediately and flings her own arm forward where she's not wearing sleeves, but an apparition of a sleeve appears as an infinity dagger, like flashes out of it towards Kella. Kella, this is hard. I understand why you found it difficult. Intentionally missing as well, but using Will's spell to replicate the dagger.
I think with that, we will kind of fade back into the present day.
At the start of a Princess Bride style rapier fight all over the floor of this library. But I think as it fades back in, Kella, with her non-writing hand, does have her hand on her tarot deck, like in the pocket of her long dress, and is like kind of feeling the magic just flowing off it. It's got a very like the same way that something has been at sea will always smell a little bit of sea salt. It has like just a touch of the astral sea, which she finds comforting after having left a decade of living there. But she goes back to her writing.
Let me ask this. How much time passes before somebody starts to speak?
I think Medea steps away for a moment and very quickly just gives out the order of like, they literally just radio the riddle over and they say, if anyone has any ideas what this means in the next 5 minutes, just like, let me know. I'm curious to hear even the dumbest theories anyone can get.
How are you're using a sitting stone?
Yeah.
At the mention of I'm interested in even the dumbest theories, Alvaron perks up because maybe he does have something to contribute.
And they start writing down on their notebook and they're like, well, we'd assume these do with specific entities based on how it's worded. So we may be looking for entities of legend or specific note in history.
Andrew, could I make either a religion check or perhaps, I mean, religion or history are going to be the same for me, unfortunately, but some sort of check. The portion of the of the prophecy that is one deep beneath the sea, restless be a servant's schemes wrapped in weeds. Any sort of bonus for the religious instruction I've been receiving as of late that I could attempt to decipher who that possibly could be, or maybe if I can't succeed on that, I know someone who might know the answer to that.
You could definitely make a religion check to see if it's like if there's a religious basis, any kind of hint in there, or to see if like you might know somebody who might know better.
Roger.
Can I make
Is
a
it-
history check about the general trio of things as Keller is now getting to writing that portion and examining it?
Yeah.
Okay. Keller, before doing it, let me check out spell slots. Before doing it, Keller kind of begins to murmur under her breath, and there's a very like, it's a whisper, but it's a whisper that anyone sitting quite close to her can hear, and it's in an arcane language. And then she, with her hand, draws a sigil in the air, and it like is tracing light. And I will skill empower my history check. I have advantage on. I have expertise on history for an hour.
If it's okay, what kind of check would it be to figure out if these relate to any specific, like, if I've heard anything related to this riddle, or if it's similar to a story I've heard? Searching to see.
It depends on like the angle that you're going at it. It could be history check. It could be an arcana check. It could be a religion check, like the two have already made. If you you don't have that.
I think they're going at it from an angle if they've heard any like fanciful children's tales in like religious books or texts. Like if this is something you'd hear in like a particular region, that kind of thing.
I think that would be a history check still.
Yeah, they're more searching for like if they've heard anything similar, so they have a clue as to like where this might come from, if that makes sense.
If you wanted to really focus on like the story aspect, I would maybe let you make a performance check with int, but I don't think that's good for you anyways.
Okay. So-
Alvaron, as you are kind of trying to think of, you're focused on the first line because it mentions the sea. That's
Yes.
kind of your jab. So I'm thinking the first line doesn't smack to you any religious things that you're aware of. I'm thinking probably the wrapped in weeds part sticks in your brain somehow because it feels to you like the most clear clue as to a creature or entity of some kind. But you're not familiar with a particular creature that wraps itself in weeds necessarily. Presumably here, you think it must refer to seaweeds. But you might be able to contact a Salt Knight might know more, or like a full member of the Salt Knights, or they might be able to ask somebody who might know more. Perhaps one of the ones who you kind of briefly encountered in the past might know a little bit more. But you're not able to suss anything beyond the words in a religious context here.
Okay. Do you want me to just make up someone from the Salt Knights who I have a relationship with at this point?
If you want to, that's fine. If not, I can do it.
I'll private message you something, and we'll see if you want to go along with it.
Okay.
Andrew,
yes.
having reread the prophecy, can I instead say that history check was about the last section because it's the only one that referenced us?
Sure, that's fine.
And while Kella is working through that stuff, Silverin is going to join her because she was writing pretty vigorously. And he is going to just kind of tap like where she was writing, and say, "Did you get the words of the prophecy itself?"
You can see that she did. It's not in common.
Is it in like what languages, or is it just like
She wrote it in Draconic because she thought that would be the most suitably dramatic.
got it? So what?
But she'll
Silverin,
point to it.
yeah, Silverin nods and says, "Well, perhaps I will write what I recall of it in Gathite, and you can tell me if any words would be better translated otherwise." He nods over to Maraveth. He is still learning.
She nods.
Also,
Yes.
I was going to say, the check I think is more focused on like if there's a specific region this might be attached to, like if they've heard of it from any specific like area, you know.
Sure. I'll do Keller's check first. So, Kella, with your 30, probably this line to you, Simax, is the easiest to read. From planes below, it's probably referring to a unholy entity of some kind, one of the dark gods, servants. But when you read thrice thwarted, thrice damned again, probably this could only refer to Saliel or one of their immediate servants, but probably it refers to the blighter themselves. That kind of are thinking about the history. It's either that or you have no context to understand this in your mind.
That was what I, as Jack, thought as I just wrote it down and was like, oh, I should ask about this one because then it just is like a thing that I think I already maybe get. And I like the idea that Keller is arrogant enough to be like, well, it must be Saliel. It couldn't be that I don't understand some other thing that was thrice thwarted. This could only be Saliel. So she's like writing down next to it the Draconic. And she writes this because Silverin's watching in Gathite, and it's the Gathite symbol for Saliel, which is probably maybe not a good thing to write in Gathite. Like maybe a Gathite wouldn't write that word, but she doesn't understand if that's the case.
As for Medea, yours was more general, right, on the whole thing?
Theirs was more like, have they heard this riddle from a temple, from a specific region?
I can tell you for a fact that you've never heard this riddle.
Okay. Have they heard anything similar, like predicting like fates and sets of threes, or like something similar to like these threats will come from this area, and like an apocryphal prophecy that isn't this one?
You've definitely heard or read riddles before of this kind of ilk. Prophecies especially like to come in things of three. That is very common. Fates, those kinds of things. 3s and 7s are typically considered to be important for whatever arcane magical reason that I don't think is very well understood, but them to be somewhat special enough. So this smacks to you as being correct in certain ways.
This couldn't be an illusion, or if this is a prophecy, it's one that like fits all of like the parameters of what one should be, you know.
Right.
There's nothing.
Certainly it could be made up, but nothing about the situation or the prophecy itself smacks you as being ingenuous. Genuine?
Has a prophecy like this ever popped up anywhere
Disingenuous?
Disingenuous, thank you.
Peninsula.
Yeah, as a prophecy that is like anyone reminiscent of this popped up anywhere else before?
Certainly there have been other prophecies of they tend to be of a poetic nature. You could probably think of I think the problem with this is that a lot of these aren't written down in places where they're easy to find. So you know that, for instance, Elkarndar had many prophecies about them that were never written down.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, this kind of prophecy is not handed down lightly, and those
Mm-hmm.
seers capable of producing prophecies oftentimes don't even understand the prophecy that they themselves have made until
Mm-hmm.
after the
It-
events have already started to happen.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay. So I think then Medea's priority is figuring out if they Yeah. Okay. Okay. Medea says, perhaps we should see if we can find some sort of experienced seer or somebody who's worked with things like this before. If these
Um,
come to pass, they may be able to provide more insight on where we can begin our journey.
and with that, Alfron, Andrew, did you get the message I sent you yet?
Got it.
Just before we go any further, Ramona, I might have an idea for this.
Okay.
Yeah, and Silveron's going to chime in eventually, but I would like to see these
I'm
guys
gonna,
resolved
I'm
first.
gonna change their name, but otherwise that's fine.
What was the
How-
original
how-
name? I want to know first. I need.
Send me the name. That's fine.
I'll tell you that the first four letters were CALA.
Why?
No,
Sean, why?
Because
Callahan.
we have a theme.
Just so, just from my brain, how long has it been since Fawn left?
By this point in time, I think you've been sitting thinking for a little bit, but not that long. So it's been 15 minutes maybe.
Okay.
You can approve the name change as well. I won't unilaterally pick a different name.
I'll let me just check. I'll defer to you most likely. Oh yeah, that works totally fine.
Yes, that is a person who you know. I think currently, they probably are in ROMs, typically.
Okay. So on that, there's a position within the Salt Knights, a person known as Keeper, a lore master. Their job, their curse, is that they are permanently banned from leaving port because of the importance of the stories that they know and the institutional knowledge that they keep with them. The current keeper she is brilliant, and she knows much, but I admit it's true. Her love of drink has overcome her love of stories somewhat in recent years. Though if anyone can parse out the first few lines or knows for sure what the first bit of that prophecy means, it's her.
How far is she from here?
In
No.
Roms, last I saw her. And I doubt she would have left. She's not fond of overland journeys. Rum doesn't taste the same far from the sea, as she puts it.
I suppose it's not a far journey. With the circle here, it wouldn't be that hard to reach Roms and make. I suppose it would be more of a question of time. Do we have better places to go first, or they look around the room?
Keller says, does Uber, do you have a magician capable of casting teleportation circle to get to Ran?
Um,
I mean, there's a permanent teleportation circle in Uba's Keep, right?
Yeah, but having someone that can cast it to Rams, because Keller doesn't know the Rams teleportation circle.
Oh, okay.
Is the nature of the issue, but Uber might have a diagram of it that she can use.
Let me make a roll.
But Keller also says, well, and she's writing now. She's pulled a page out of her spellbook and is writing it in Draconic and very quickly copying what she has written in her notes to her page. And she's making 5 of them in one in Draconic. She's making 5 of them. 1 in Draconic, 2 in Gathite, the rest in Common. To give her notes out to everybody else. But she says, I think that the first step will always be to be finding some research to do. And Rams is a better place than any, except for Philanthrogon.
Uba will say, yeah, the wizard who helped do the circle, they left it's like a small, like a pamphlet really, of like common teleportation circles. So and they'll like have one of the servants go and fetch it for them.
Keller's very excited at getting to learn some new magic teleportation circles. She says, oh, then I can get us to Rams. It's real easy.
Elverin nods deeply, takes the sheets, slides one over to Maraveth, and is very carefully examining his own.
I'll post the sheet for you.
Got it. And you said earlier that Kella's command of the language is like a very like formal, like sort of academic thing.
Yes.
Is the dialect she uses also like archaic, or
No? So she speaks Gathite with the proficiency of will, but without the social understanding of having ever lived with Gathite.
Got it.
So Will takes that like very, very strong knowledge of Gathite and passes it through the social way in which Gathite speak and write. Keller has that encyclopedic knowledge of Gathite, but without any understanding of Gathite beyond Selverin. So it's just like she's using it as if you would use Common. She's just substituting the correct words and grammar and stuff.
Got it. In that case, Silverin passes it over to Maraveth with a quiet murmur in Gathite of, this should help also with studies of Common. But he doesn't mention anything to Kella yet about where he would adjust the use of language. Instead, he's poring over that second because of the on high, that verse about on high. And he's actually asking Maraveth, I don't know the apprentice's stat block, but I'm assuming that he may have had a little bit more time to just study the oral traditions, being like sick and kind of contained a little bit more. So he's deferring a little bit to him, not just on history, but some of the traditional religion, as they figure what they can from that verse.
You're talking about the second line in particular, or not the second line?
The second verse, because that was the one about looking from on high, right?
Yeah, the Pale Court.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what would strike him as the most immediately something that he should look at.
Okay. Want to do what? Insight check?
Yeah.
You can make an insight check. Maraveth will give you advantage. I think they are, in some ways, they definitely are a higher int than you, but I think with some things they'll still try to defer to you, but only give out pointers where they feel necessary.
Okay.
And
well, thank you, Maraveth.
Definitely
very
helped
useful
you.
apprentice.
Yeah, Jesus.
So
Having an
Solverin
apprentice
just
is great.
yeah, Solverin just like is completely off, almost on a tangent. Kind of talking aloud. He's a fan of narrating his
I'll put this
process
in
to
the chat.
Maraveth.
So the stream. I'll put it in the stream. So as you're reading this over, you can only assume, or Maribeth will say, well, the first bit of the line, it must refer to a nobleman of some, right, or otherwise some nobility in practice. It's like a celestial sort. The line "blood of blue" suggests this as well.
Very, very stoically, Solverin looks at Maraveth and raises his voice just a little bit so that Kella can easily hear him as well, as he's still in Gathite, and says, "Blood of blue. I thought that meant he was very cold."
Kella giggles quite loudly, broken out of her copying maybe the fourth of these, one of the ones in common, and just like skews her quill directly across the paper. It's like writes at the top, Alvaron.
Maribeth will say, no, you see, most, it's for humans, the, and they'll like point out to maybe Calandra, the veins appear to be blue under the skin, particularly when the skin is particularly pale. I know that sometimes nobles are referred to as blue bloods because I had asked somebody had asked me why my veins appeared to be so purplish.
It comes from the conception that many of those who do common labor, their skin becomes more tanned, and so the blue tint goes away.
Has
Is
Medea
this
learned?
conversation in common?
Yeah, it's not.
Okay.
Has Medea? Yeah, like if Medea's learned Gathite, like Solverin would totally include them in it.
No, okay, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
I think parts of the conversation have to be in common because Maribeth can't explain this in Gathite. There's not the words for it.
Got it.
I have a question.
Yes. In game or out of game?
It is sort of out of game because I want to just be like, Kella's very smart, so I'm going to assume that anything I am smart enough to surmise Kella can have that. Can I make a roll of some kind about the... Because Kella didn't really clock it while writing it down, but when it's said out loud that it's talking about blood and then feeding, can I make some kind of roll to see if that is a connection? Because I also am aware of some stuff in Imris that exists.
You can make an
but I don't
check, I think.
Yeah, I want to be as above board as possible that I'm not like just in some way metagaming my own brain into something.
So yeah, did Medea kick in since some of it was in?
I think Medea understands enough. Like they hear something about like how it's a nobility and the color blue, and they're like, well, a lot of it comes from the conception that nobles don't have to work as much outside, and so because they don't, their skin remains untanned, and so that blue in their veins shows extremely clearly.
Solverin looks right up at Medea and says, "Are you certain that it is not blood of seawater, perhaps? They say the high seas in common as well."
I mean, it could mean both. Many of these prophecies will take on both of these meanings. It could very well mean that they're somewhere cold and also be referring to the nobility.
Also, the sea rarely looks purely blue.
Have I heard of a court referred to specifically as the Pale Court?
Maribeth will say, seems strange that the chieftain would not work. Kind of under his breath.
Keller laughs at that one too.
haven't heard of a pale court before.
Mhm.
That's not a term that you're familiar with.
I'll see how Calandra's check resolves.
So blood and feeding put together smacks to you of of some creatures, some demonic or demon adjacent have cursed entities that can be of any humanoid race that primarily feeds on blood, typically the blood of humanoids, although animals will do in a pinch. Typically, these creatures have a couple rules for our sake. They are vampiric in nature. They're not seen that often or heard of that often. It's a pretty rare thing. But you have heard stories of different individuals who have kind of given over themselves to the demons and received this kind of power. You've heard of warlocks who have made bargains with demons for magical power, but this is a different sort of power. It's a sort of power that is favored by those who are a little bit more sadistic, perhaps, and prefer a softer sort of influence because of the charming powers that are granted by them. That could very well be what this line is referring to.
I think she writes like in specifically in the arcane language. Now that she's not going to copy this for notes, she writes in the arcane language next to the second verse. Basically, maybe a vampiric creature will research and like circles it a bunch so that like that's her thing to follow up on, and she doesn't add that to other people's because doesn't want to overload the idiots.
And to clarify for everybody, the three things that set that off are palest, blood, and feeding. Three common traits of these creatures.
Yeah, she like works back from feeding, and it was like the mention of the veins on the surface that made her think of like maybe that's what this is about. But yeah, she makes a note on her own thing to like look that up when they're doing some research and leave the other things more to Medea. By now, everybody has been given a page of immaculately written notes in their language of choice. Well, Draconic for Uber.
This is a weird question, but are prophecies ever often linked to the same magic as curses?
Sometimes they can be intertwined. There are curses that like have sort of prophecies attached to the breaking, especially, or
prophecies that imply a curse.
Right.
Yeah. Would somebody who's a specialist in curses be somebody who can parse out like essentially like the implications of a prophecy as well?
They would probably be better at it than most.
Okay.
Witches, hags in particular, would double-edged sword because hags are hags, but a powerful hag could probably tell you a lot about this, depending on what you are willing to give.
Medea says, if Alvaron's particular connection does not work out, there are entities that are probably more unscrupulous that may have information for us as well. Hags, as you may know them, are as gifted as they are on curses as they are interpreting this kind of thing.
What does Solverin know of hags? I think that might be an uncommon enough word that he looks to Kella just almost instinctively.
Keller finds the words for evil and shaman and monster and puts them together. It's an evil shaman monster.
Yeah. I think Silverin just looks to Medea, doesn't say anything, just stares at Medea for a long moment.
Perhaps if we don't want to make a deal with them too, there is something to be gleaned from their equipment, their resources. Anything that interacts with fate, I'd assume, would have something about this.
Certainly a prestigious thing to become hag hunters for a moment.
But hag hunters for information rather than cleansing is certainly a choice.
Killing hags is always a good idea. They are deeply evil creatures. Is it true they steal babies? And she kind of looks at Medea.
Do they steal babies, Andrew?
I don't
They certainly
remember,
have been
but I feel like probably.
accused of such. You've never met a hag, so you can't verify this, but there are definitely stories.
Medea's very pro hag. Hags are just humans.
It's
Just ugly humans.
It is a tale that pops up with such frequency. It would be wrong to ignore its possibility. As with all mythical creatures, what a hag is probably differs greatly from how the magic affects a region. But yes, certainly has happened.
They do also come in threes, right?
Usually, yeah. Would it be wrong for Medea to know about like covens?
I think you can, between you and Kella, you can know a fair amount about hags.
Yes, they
Covens,
usually
that's
come in pairs of covens. It's all things that come with fate tend to come in either pairs of 3 or 7.
Keller nods.
There is probably something to the fact that there were 6 of us, and as Farn came here, he made a 7th.
He did mention it as auspicious. Though I don't... It's strange. She shakes her head and then like hands Medea the final sheet of paper that she had been working on. We could go to Rams tonight. I have the capability still. Though perhaps resting here would be best for...
Oh, yes. Speaking of which, so the servant returns with a... it is like a little pamphlet. Like it's hardbound, but it's only like 5 pages. Like well protected because these are important. But it has this awesome temple one, the one for the Lyceum in Roms, one for the kind of public twin port circle. One that not, I don't know. This is strange necessarily, but it's you wouldn't always put those cities together. The last one is not as important, you realize, as the other one, but it might just be because of where this person.
Andrew,
it is. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, are any of the Threat Kingdoms specific royal color blue instead of purple?
Ooh.
So the last one is for Samacius. I was just... which is... So Morados, their colors are blue. It's kind of a very dark.
Are they? They're the northern one too, right?
Yeah.
Medea also says, on the note of we talked about nobility a little bit. When he says, on the note of kingdoms and nobility associated with the color blue, there is a portion of Threat, one of the kingdoms, that uses that as their noble color of prestige. That may be a good place to begin hunting there. It's a simple connection, but it's one they take great pride in.
The people of Threat are not particularly fair-skinned, Keller said while gesturing to herself, who is quite olive-skinned. But maybe. Also, there are other uses of the word pale.
We're also somewhat not surrounded, but there are 4 not nation states, but independent entities that use the color blue, next to the the Suthanate of Telanthrogon. So take that as you will.
Yeah.
Take that as Andrew likes the color blue.
Okay.
So just so I can double check, the 5 in the pamphlet or 4 in the pamphlet were Saltum, Twinport, the Lyceum, and Samacius?
Yes. Which
Okay.
is the biggest city in Thrace, but it's like, just not quite as important as the other ones.
I will commit the new sigils to memory over. I only need 3 of them, so the 3 minutes it takes because of how this works. But she draws them in to her spellbook.
One of the pages is just like, these magic circles were put down by da 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 da.
Okay.
I think going to Rom's perhaps and having access to the library couldn't hurt tomorrow as well.
Keller nods.
Well, if we don't have any reason to wait, we should just head off.
Sure. I am happy to go to Rom's, get in there. She covertly moves her hand from her tarot cards to her coin purse and is slightly weighing how much money she has.
Mm-hmm.
If she's doing that covertly, I guess I'll just kind of roll a perception maybe to see if he.
I'll make a
notices
sleight
that.
of hand check
There
for
you go.
something in my own pocket if you require.
Yeah, is she doing I couldn't tell if the coin pouch was on her belt or in her pocket.
No, she has deep dress. All of her dresses have pockets because
Okay.
she had them made herself. Because of why would you not do that? But
Then in that
I'll roll.
It
I feel
doesn't
like
need
I
to be
should
a
have
perception.
advantage.
Yeah, no, if it's in her dress, that's a different story. It was if she was a coin pouch on her belt that she's weighing, Silverin's going to maybe notice.
You might hear the jingle, right, of her weighing it.
Well, you know that I'll
just
roll
roll sleight of
perception.
hand. Fine, we'll do it. She spills a bunch of coins into her own pocket.
Oops.
So
my gloves of thievery malfunctioned and they became gloves of loudly pickpocketing yourself.
Silverin just looks over at the jangle, but doesn't quite occur to him without the obviousness of it being on his belt.
Pretends that nothing is happening and the jingling's coming from somewhere else.
Now that Silver joined us, what is Uba thinking, or are they feeling as the others are kind of trying now to suss out what the riddle might be? This person, Barn, whatever they were having left.
I think that Uba is feeling weirdly useless right now because they I don't think they know a whole lot of Imris history outside of the places they've visited anyway. So not only that, but this is a very studious riddle. I think that Uba is trying their best to pay attention, but their mind is on other things right now. They're maybe trying to think of references, but they're just I don't know, weeds and courts. I don't know. This is confusing.
I think with that, is there anything that you guys want to do here before you go to Rom's? It's late, but it's after dinner time. You could still go to Rom's. Right?
What's the time difference? How late is it? Are we getting to Rom's at 3 in the morning?
No, it would. I guess it would be.
It's the other way.
Later. It would be midnight, I think. Maybe not quite that late, but
I think.
Is it worth then waiting to get there until tomorrow and arriving at the normal? Well, I'll say this. I think earlier we arrive, the more likely she's hungover. If we shoot for noon to 2-ish in the afternoon, she'll be just starting to drink off the hangover and will be at her most sober.
I'm pretty sure you can just greater restore a hangover away. And drunkenness.
Don't do that. I saw
Will she be more?
I saw someone attempt to make her less inebriated once. That person required a greater resurrection after the fact. She's not to be trifled with. This is not a friend of mine. This is someone who might know an answer.
The look on Keller's face is not one of fear, but of that was a challenge. But she doesn't know greater restoration, so sadly. Keller, I think, will say, oh, wait, there's a time difference. It's going to be really late, so maybe the morning is better. Alvaron's right. The morning is better.
Well, I did say early afternoon for them, but
that's
yes,
morning
in
first.
principle, we agree.
Yes. The best way to agree, in principle.
Mm-hmm.
Alvaron, you can also see, is throwing together one of his little vials of salt water, pouring it into a somewhat larger glass, adding a drop of what some of you might recognize to be grog, swirling it together, saying a quick prayer, and then dumping it. Mars, I'll just answer your question in general. This is a person who is a member of the Salt Knights, but her job is specifically a keeper, like a lore master. She is considered so important she is not allowed to leave port. However, with time with her assignment, she has become a bit of a drunkard, has become more in love with drink than the stories she keeps. She is still an asset, she is still a resource, but a problematic one.
Thank you.
And she's helping with the first part of the riddle, the wrapped in weeds portion. Talama Detour is the name. So I will take that, say a prayer over it, and then dump it into another nearby body of water and just let it go. And then for good measure, take a small drink out of the grog, grimace, and then set myself to rights. Or that I'm ready to go.
I think
Alvaron is a lot more superstitious in some ways. Or at least, even if he doesn't believe in the superstitions, he's picked up on them a lot more. Will would be very much bemused by the amount of like little superstitions that Alvaron has begun to take more seriously.
Will had superstitions, so would have been bemused of the choices that Alvaron is making, but understand them. Keller's like, okay, people do stupid things. I get it.
Woof. God damn.
But not out loud. She internalizes all these critiques now.
I'm sure, but it's kind of like realizing what you as a kid were doing when you're like, wow, my aunt, my uncle, and my parents are all fucked up. Hey, it can't be anything systemic. It must be that they're weird. Anyways, I'm normal and moves on.
All true. All true.
If anyone watching this, by the way, needs to go to therapy, you can blame me and send your therapy bills to me. Find me on Twitch.
Well, that feels like a great deal. I'll do that.
Yeah, right. Let's go.
Oh fuck! All of you, you're too fucked up.
Okay.
Keller will stay in this main area until literally everybody else is gone. So she won't even start getting ready to sleep until everybody is gone.
Before Silverin departs with his apprentice in tow, he's going to tap the sheet where he's tucking it away, and say, I owe you some item of exchange, and nod before taking his leave.
Kella has a face that I guess Silverin doesn't know Kella that well, but Kella's just making a face of like I gave you something that is meant to help you. You don't have to give me something back. But doesn't really know how to say that to somebody that she has viewed as an authority figure for like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's now doodling pictures of people in her spellbook. It's like Uber with one giant tooth, Solverin with one giant eye, Medea with one giant antler coming out of the top of his head, Alvaron with like halfway up to his waist in salt water, just wading around. They're not flattering doodles, but they're also not very well drawn.
Mm-hmm.
Did one of the servants take over making sure that the guests, I mean, Silverin probably still has his usual room, but one of the servants make sure that the guests had their rooms, or was
Yeah,
that left to...
There's the rooms that just happen to be decorated for them, with the exception of Kella.
Nice.
Yeah, Keller walks into a room filled with instruments.
Kella would get well, so there's probably like some like instruments hanging on the wall or like little paintings of like bards like playing the lute or something.
When Keller, much later, does go to her room and sees that it was a room that was designed for Will, there's like a moment where her eyes sort of start to tear up, not because she said that it wasn't for her, but because she said, because it's the first time for like a long time that she's reminded of not being with Will. But then she spends like 3 of the 8 hours of this long rest avoiding sleep by practicing rapier, and sits down and like draws her tarot cards out and is like doing some tarot reading that she doesn't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
But just trying to avoid sleep since she spent so long in a land where dreams are slightly more vivid and malicious sometimes than in the real world.
Medea spends the downtime using their Weaver's tools while thinking on the subject and waiting for people to get back to them to make a little quilt. And they're just putting people's like symbology they associated with, and they've started trying to figure out exactly what they want to put for Kella onto this. And so far, all they've come up with is they've started to sketch out like a very medieval version of a brain, basically. But it looks like they've sketched out. It looks like electricity coming out of the brain, basically. So it looks like there's like too much going on, you know.
It's a mind eater. It's an intellect devourer. That's what Keller secretly is.
Wow.
There's nothing else. You guys pass the night still kind of percolating on what you're going to ask and what this prophecy might foretell. You guys want to wake up early then, so that you can go to Ramon's.
Yeah.
In the early afternoon.
Keller, irrespective of when everybody else wants to wake up, Keller wakes up quite late since she puts off sleeping for as long as possible.
Makes sense.
And she also wakes up and has immediately 3 more shots of coffee. But yeah, she's ready to go pretty much straight away. She's today, instead of wearing a long dress, because she's less comfortable out here in this long dress, so she's not wearing a long sleeved long dress. She's wearing quite a short, like knee length dress with no sleeves, so you can see the braces on her arms. Her belt still has the rapier, but she's also wearing like very long knee-high boots.
Alvaron is, for the first time, wearing what amounts to priestly robes. For those of you that have seen, they're somewhat long and flowing, well suited to sea, in that they're a quick drying fabric. You know, you could hang these in the sun and they dry within 1 or 2 hours, no issue. And with the kind of, not haphazard, because that's not the right word, but new initiate, perhaps, or neophyte, there is a very rough sigil kind of embroidered in the one shoulder / arm of the thin flowing robes that Alvaron is wearing. And they're suited to work. They're not flowing and ornate like priestly robes. These are workman's robes that serve an ornate purpose. And there's also an empty space in the sigil, as if some patch or some portion is missing. But that is what Alvaron comes to breakfast wearing for this trip to Rams.
You all, as you're heading down to breakfast, the servants have prepared something, pretty standard. There are some it's very thin, kind of flatbread, served with goulash that has some eggs in it for your breakfast. You eat pretty quickly, and Kelly, you have since memorized this circle to go to the Lyceum. And then everything is ready for your departure. Sylvain, are you planning on having Maraveth go with you? I would assume so, but I feel like asking. Actually,
yeah.
Maraveth will ask Sylvain, says, Master, is it... Or I don't think he would say master. Teacher, is it appropriate that I accompany you?
Silverin looks at him even a little long in Gathite culture before he responds. You were one of the 6 that Farn spoke to, were you not?
I suppose, though I feel the odd one out.
No odder than Kella.
Kella close enough to hear this?
I
His
think-
brutality?
I think this conversation is being had
Yeah.
privately. He says,
Kella's also pretty non-observant, so
I think,
for her own mental health, she doesn't hear this.
yes, in a way, though I am, of all of you, the least experienced in these sorts of things. Adventuring, as it were.
So when they traveled together, so it's a year and a day since they last met.
Mhm.
How long were they together by the end of it? I don't know that we ever established that.
So you didn't go until after you went after the one shot with. So it's been 4-ish months, I will say. That's how long it roughly took for the journey to happen, since you couldn't use magic. For you to stay a little bit, for like a month and then return.
All right, and then Silverin was with the group before we departed from each other for how long? Sorry, these are questions I should have the answers to.
Almost an equal amount of time. I think slightly longer. I'd have to double check my notes. It was a few months, but not that much longer than that.
All right. Silverin says, a year and 6 months ago, I strode down out of the mountains and nearly died of heat exhaustion before Medea found me. I do not think you need to worry so much about the experience you have now, as you will need to worry about surviving the experiences to accumulate more.
Yes, I think he kind of you get the impression with your passive insight that he wants to say something like, "That's my concern," but he decides not to.
Yeah, Silverin pretends he didn't notice that doubt, and just ushers him ahead of him into the dining area.
You have your breakfast. get ready to depart.
Yeah, Keller, in whatever room that they are in, once we're ready, will just pull out some sapphire chalk and begin casting the spell there. She says, "Everybody ready? It's only 6 seconds. Very quick. Tick, 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 tick."
I think as she's doing that, Uba is like pseudo yelling like some instructions of what to do while they're gone at the servants. And I think probably up until the point where we actually like disappear, Uba's still trying to like talk to them, like, oh, and don't forget this, and oh, these people might come, they're kind of annoying, and and then
All right. Keller pulls out her spell book, and just lets it fall open, and the pages kind of flutter a little bit before it lands on teleportation circle. And she, with her finger, begins to incant the start of the spell, drops the chalk, and beneath her, a little green figure of Keller at the age of 10. Like crouching, playing with chalk on the ground, begins to draw the inner circle, and as the ethereal figure moves around the circle, they age, and you see Keller at 12, and then 14, 15, 16, 18. There's a moment at the beginning where they're in their old like Ramnian outfit that they bought, and then they've moved to wearing a far too big old sailor's coat that is clearly Will's coat. And then later on, they're wearing something that's been patched together from different rags that they had left in the Astral Sea. And then it finally becomes Keller as she is now, as the two meld together, and she leans down and completes the circle like the final stroke. And then a portal appears above her, which slowly begins to descend on all of us. And where Will teleports with the bombastic urgency of a ship hitting a wave, Keller's is perfectly smooth and very pleasant as we appear in the Lyceum.
As you appear in the Lyceum, the mood changes drastically. You go from a small, notable town in the middle of the desert, the Alcon Desert, to immediately a bustling, vibrant city, and in particular a the sort of college town part of this city. Even early in the mornings, there are students rushing seemingly late for early morning classes. Wizard robes, apprentice robes, kind of swishing as they walk on by. Others, perhaps more senior, flying, heading to different landings of the Lyceum Tower to conduct research or maybe even teach their own classes. You are on one of it's actually one of about a dozen teleportation circles that are linked. And as you kind of plop in, the attendant thank you for using the Lyceum teleportation circles. We have instituted a fee of today is 1 silver. It's the weekday.
That's like literally nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, we pay that. That's not an issue.
He picks it up. Thank you for your patronage. Please come again.
Since we're here for Salama, I know what bars she frequents. I know what parts of port she usually stays in. We shouldn't have an issue. Should we just go there at this time and try to suss her out, or does anyone have any business that they want to try to handle before then? But I feel like we're here for this particular mission.
We have no business in ROMs.
Sounds about right.
Uba is just kind of I don't think Uba's actually been here. I know some of the party went at one point, but I think Uba stayed behind. So I think Uba is like lost in the sauce. They're just like, wow, like this is big city. They're like not paying attention right now.
Oh god damn it.
Keller-
You're a freshman in New Orleans for the first time, aren't you?
Keller is having a reaction that is based on the same thing, but is just deep fear of being around this many people. Like, this is a lot of people, and she's trying to kind of stand between the two Gathites in a way that she is not really visible to outside the group. But at the same time, she's reaching into her bag of holding, and she pulls out this piece of leather, and she just like really in quite a deep fashion pulls it down the side of her arm, and she casts mage armor on herself. But she's white knuckling this piece of leather and digging it into her arm a bit harder than she probably requires.
Medea just pulls out a single piece of a single gold piece and hands it over and says, "That should be enough for everyone here, right?"
Yes, of course. They'll give you back change. They don't include Kojin as being a person for this particular instance.
A whole 4 silver pieces back. Let's go.
Solverin shifts, and while normally he's gotten into a habit of almost taking up less space in crowded areas, kind of moving a little bit more carefully, as he shifts and steps off the platform, bracketing Kella with Maraveth, he is just kind of like full broad shoulder, fullest height, arms akimbo a little bit, resting on his belt to take up more space than usual, giving Kella a wider berth from the crowd.
Well, thank you. We'll be heading off now.
They don't even look up from their ledger as they, a few minutes later, as you're walking off, you hear of somebody else arriving. But yeah, as you're walking through, those of you unaccustomed to the city, Uba, you've been in Talanfagan, but Ram's is just a little bit more impressive in scale, if not in grandeur. It just stretches on. You're at a particular rise because that's where the Lyceum is, and you can see the city just going down on and on. Basically, beyond your eyesight, you can see even still more buildings off in the distance, which there are very, very few other cities that can have that same effect.
As we're walking along, Alvaron is kind of leading and taking us closer to port and closer to where we need to go. He says, I just want to mention, sometimes the lore master, she has a habit of demanding a story in exchange for a story. So if anyone here has a piece of lore or a particular story they think is worth her time, it would be good to remember and rehearse it now. Because if she has information for us, it might come at a bit of a trade.
I think
And I've already traded her too, so she very much won't let me speak.
I have a few stories that come to mind, but 1 or 2 in particular I have rehearsed more than once.
Uba says, I mean, we've fought so many interesting creatures, seen so many interesting things. I'm sure that we can cobble together one of our tales.
Alvaron nods and has kind of a smile, and it's not that she requires heroic epics. And as he's walking, there kind of comes a fondness to his smile. She's a storyteller. Of course, she loves to be told a good story. And kind of a more serious note overtakes him as we begin to. It kind of goes from that. If you've ever been in one, that college town when it shifts by zip code and now it becomes more blue collar. It's where the poor college students live instead of the people whose parents pay their bills type thing. That zip code changes. And
in particular, you get closer to where the docks are on this side of the river. Yeah, so why don't you roll me, Alvaron, an investigation check to try to locate Talama.
Sure, coming right at you.
you can only assume that you will be checking a number of different bars.
You said insight, correct?
Investigation.
Oh, my apologies. Same bonus. It works.
0. Though you're not particularly skilled at this, you do know how to find people who like their drink a little bit too much. As you guys are making your way down along the city,
I don't like this. I don't like this when Keller's on the verge of a panic attack already. I'll just full disintegrate something if it scares her. That's fine.
Oh gosh.
you
The game becomes
feel
like Jailbreak.
a not particularly adept pickpocket. They go to reach in, and perhaps because of the way that Silverin is standing, it's not the best lift in the world. They try to nick that coin purse that you were previously kind of fidgeting with.
Keller notices it. This goes very bad.
Yes, I rolled pretty low.
Keller, kind of without drawing attention to it, says very quietly under her voice, under her breath, so the pickpocket can hear, as she like shifts that pocket away from their hand, says, "You should find someone else, because I could turn you into a toad or send you to a hell dimension for a little bit, and I would enjoy both, but it's a waste of my energy."
Make an intimidation check.
I'll banish this person. I'll do it.
And this is happening right next to him. Is this passive or active perception?
You definitely, Silverin, you definitely noticed the pickpocket, and you also see that Kella has noticed. Despite ultimately not being that physically threatening, this person, maybe having heard similar threats before, that are bluffs, they think that today is not their day, and you, both of you, see the person who had kind of went to go bump Kella in that classic, like, oh, I'm gonna bump you and take your stuff kind of thing. Slowly take their hand away. You can see it is a younger looking gnome, as they kind of say, sorry, welcome to Rom's, and before padding off.
Kella, before they
not of the area.
Before they can pad off, like, puts her right hand really gently on his arm and says, "No harm, but I would like to try and pickpocket something off him before he retreats."
Go ahead.
Just sleight of hand, I assume.
Yeah.
Silverin has just, like...
Why am I so dumb?
I
chronal shift.
Yeah, you deserve that.
Okay, sure.
Get out of here. I already made a note that I'm bad at sleight of hand. Yeah, so Kella sees a world in which she just full, like, prods this person in the chest and is like, no, not that. And chronal shifts it. I don't like wasting chronal shift on this, but felt like it was necessary.
That was critical. Not literally, but necessary.
There's like a version of events that happens where they just assume that you're straight up robbing them, but you kind of take that back and then effortlessly lift the 3 coin purses that they had in their pockets.
Kella smiles and reaches into her pocket to deposit them and pulls out a coin and says, "For you, for the introduction to ROMs."
What denomination is it?
A gold.
They warily take it. They watch your step, but you seem to be doing that.
She smiles like the little weirdo she is. Excellent. I'll check those coin purses later when Silverin maybe didn't see it all happen.
Silverin definitely saw As this exchange is finishing, you can all smell the salt water on the air mixed with there's kind of like there's probably a tannery nearby. There's some like industrial smell going on in this particular order of ROMs. But as you all are approaching the first bar, which Alron thinks of, where they met once or twice previously, you all hear a loud and see up above you a body fly through a window. Alvaron, this is the bar that you were going to, in which this body has just flown through this window.
Do I recognize the body?
Taking a quick look, it is a sailor. You maybe have seen them, but it's nobody you know.
And there's no concern about the body striking any of
Kella-
us.
No. This is happening like well in front of you.
Kella just instinctively does all of the parts of casting Featherfall before realizing that she didn't prepare Featherfall, and just watches this body thud to the ground. Is like, I think that's fine.
They roll over.
So as we walk up with the kind of, I'm wearing priestly garb. I feel somewhat insulated, but not like insulated, but not protected. I hope that makes sense. As we walk up, I'm just going to speak with sort of kind of frank confidence to this person and offer them a hand. Sailor, what the hell did you do? And try to help them aloft.
Keeper's in a mood.
Help them up, clap them on the back. I'll slip them a rum chit and go drink somewhere else, friend. I have business with the keeper.
Take us off. Good luck. You're gonna need it.
Hold on. I'm gonna look something up because it's what I want to lead with, and it's something from history. Give me 1 second.
While you're doing that, you can go ahead, Moaz.
I was just gonna say, I think Uba is just like watching all of this happen, says under their breath, "This place is awesome."
As that happens, Kella has stepped back, a little bit more buoyed by her dealing with the pickpocket. She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm great, and I shouldn't be worried in this place." And she kind of steps back to Uber and is like, "Hey, did you see the person that tried to pickpocket me?"
I actually think Uba wouldn't have. They would have been like looking all over the place. So they say, "Someone tried to pickpocket you. Did you stab them?"
No, but I did this, and she pulled out 3 other coin purses.
I think Uba like puts their hand not on Kella's shoulder because I don't think they can reach, but maybe like kind of on like their hand. And like they look like they're actually about to like cry with pride. They're getting like a little teary-eyed.
Kella's like, "Here, help me count them quickly. I can buy drinks now."
Yeah, Uba will grab one and start stealthily doing that. They put their hood up on their what is it? Their cape or their robe? Yeah, the robe while they're doing this to try and be
To
extra
be more
stealthy.
stealthy.
Yeah.
Kella doesn't have a hood, but is sad about it.
Between the 3 bags, there's about 50 gold. One of the bags contains mostly silver. One of the bags has, like 5 gold in it. The third bag, however, contains most of the money. Best mark for this young individual.
I think that Uba actually like doesn't want any of the money. They like give it all back to Kella and say enjoy yourself. Also, Uba has 10,000 gold right now, so I don't think they need any.
Kella has, including that 50, 170 gold. Very rich.
You all walk in. Alvaron, let me know when you want.
I found the thing, so I'm ready to go. It's just it's a short poem and it made sense for the moment.
Okay.
Just as we burst into the bar or the tavern or saloon as it is, Alvaron kind of belts out with a familiar cadence as if he's belted it before. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer, if you're a pretender, come sit by my fire, for we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, and on the last come in, he pounds twice on the door of the bar, and Keeper Talama Detour is there. I'm guessing standing in front of the bar and looking none too happy.
Yeah, so as you guys are walking in, the name of this particular establishment is the Lighthouse Fire. It is as far as sailors' bars go, it's actually somewhat high end. There's good, except for one now, glass on all of the windows. The floors seem well scrubbed and kept. And this is more like, officers, maybe a captain or two, but it still has that kind of rough and tumble feel to it that you get at really. Standing leaning back on the bar, facing out, is a rather tall, leanly muscled woman. They are wearing nothing from the waist up and have no shoes on. Their hands are filled with rings of various different sorts. They have, I should have looked up the proper name. They have one of those chains that goes from the nose to the ear that is silver or perhaps platinum. They're not really sure. And on their face is a look of mild annoyance as they go for another sip of their drink. Alvaron, what is it? They have the voice that you can only get by smoking an excessive amount of tobacco on the daily.
Just curious, how full is the rest of the bar?
Despite whatever altercation just happened, there's still like a decent number of people, and they're all staring at you, and then like glancing back at Keeper, and then looking back at you, wondering if this is going to be a repeat of the incident that just happened.
So, knowing how she is, I'm going to walk up with confidence and put 2 rum chits on the bar and say, Keeper, I've come to you with a question, and unlike last time, I brought a friend with a better story than mine. And I hope you'll accept it. And I'll slide one of the rum chits in front of her and lock eyes with the barkeep, and I'm not breaking that eye contact.
They kind of give a cough. Well, I'm listening.
With the I'm listening, I'll look back and lock eyes with Medea and like look over. I'll pull a 3rd rum chit out and slide it across Keeper and put it on the seat next to them. Because of course, no one would have the brass balls to sit next to Keeper and like put it so like Keeper's in the middle, I'm on the right, and I slide the rum chit to the left of Keeper. Sit back, look back at Medea, and look forward. And rum chits have not been claimed by the bartender yet.
So is the implication to sit down where Alvaron put them? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Medea takes the invitation and sits down and says, Alvaron has made clear you are looking for a story, yes? Or you collect them?
It's interesting.
So, do you want a story, or is it merely a pastime? Is it a 1-for-1, or do you determine the price afterwards?
Depends. They'll look around. Their voice changing drastically. Depends on what you want. Let me know. I will tell you the price.
Medea looks to Alvaron.
You look in their hand, and they seem to have coughed up pure soot, which they kind of wipe on the bar.
Ooh. In response to their "What do you want?" I will recite as close in cadence as I can. One deep beneath the sea, restless bee, a servant schemes, wrapped in weeds.
Rapid.
Then,
They kind of think about this.
with that, I'll
He says
flick
it's
my
wax
rum
and-
chit forward.
That that's something you heard, or the new one for me?
One that was told to us. I look over. We have the whole prophecy, but this seemed the most up your alley, such as it were.
I lean back, take a swig of rum. When you first walked in, they had been swaying and slightly slurring as though they were, a few cups in. They have steadied themselves since that time. And they put a hand on the bar and say, yeah, I can help you, I suppose. I look up. And they kind of are looking around now at your companions. If you have a good enough story, I'll take that. Otherwise, one of you can fight me.
Kella's eyes just like super widen as like she's already reaching for her rapier.
Is there a benefit to doing both?
To what
to me.
stakes? And the fight, to what stakes or cost?
She tries.
If it is a fight to the death, I
First
can fix
to-
that problem after you lose.
Kind of thinks about it for a second. Looks at the bartender. Too messy. Just the first down. I'll only use my fists. You can use whatever you want. We'll say no magic, only because glanced around the bar again. Get a bit dicey.
What about a story and a fight?
You asked one question. I have one answer.
Medea stands up and says, I would find it unfair to use a weapon if you do not use one, but I think it would be easier to tell a story in a fight than it would be without one.
Thinks about this for a minute. Sure. What? And with a imperceptible motion of the head, tables begin to be cleared. All the sailors get up and begin to drag chairs around until there is a nice, very big, clear space in the center of this bar.
Andrew, if you're okay with it, at that imperceptible head nod, Alvaron moves to and begins helping to clear tables with an apology to the group. Just sorry, and begins helping.
Andrew, I don't know if this is me stealing from your old history, but does Street have a particular history of like hand-to-hand wrestling?
Yeah.
Medea says, is wearing armor passe in this competition, or is it fine?
She shrugs. I'll win either way.
Medea says, I have told or heard many stories, but I've never been very good at telling them myself. However, one I have come to hear more than once is the tale of the hunt and the bird. And he sort of motions as he gets to the edge of the circle and spreads their stance wide with both of their hands open, and sort of makes themselves as firm to the ground as they can, almost preparing to like catch them if they come at them.
I will say that Silverin kind of tilted his head back and examined the person at their confidence that they would win. Does he believe that they have a chance of winning against Medea?
I'll allow here a insight, perception.
19.
Okay.
I rolled it pretty much as I said it.
You're looking at them. Certainly, they are confident that they're going to win. That's not an idle boast. They truly and deeply believe that. You're looking them over. They're definitely like they're not the bulkiest, bruiser that you've ever seen. But this is a person who is well scarred, um, and knows what they're about. You can tell by the way that they stand and move. This person is, strictly speaking, an unarmed fighter. And so weaponless, Medea is probably at a fairly significant disadvantage from what you know of Medea's fighting style.
I think while the tables were being cleared, Uba sprinted to the bar and got drinks for everyone else that is not Medea actively about to fight. Uba's someone that's at a WWE match right now. They're hype.
Why don't we take a break, actually, before this fight happens around that time?
Yes.
We will take a quick, we'll say, 10-minute break, if that's okay with everybody. And then back. We'll say at the 20.
Okay.
We will see you all in just a minute as we go into fight. And we're back. They do. We're back.
Yeah, I think Uba not only has like drinks for everyone, but maybe they have like little skewers of meat. Like they're like full on WWE. Like they would have a Medea t-shirt if those were available. Like
Passing some things out.
I feel like they also would be the kind of person where they're selling t-shirts for the bartender too, but they have some other guy selling it for them. You know?
yeah.
Mm.
Some random person.
Yeah, so as everything is cleared, rounds of drinks are passed around, and people do. A few people start to place bets. Medea, you are not the favorite. Whoever is participating, I will not do sports betting odds, but they're bad. You have a very, very low chance, according to these sailors, of beating this person.
Mm-hmm.
Can you roughly say how much? Like 4-1, which is very bad in a 2 thing.
No, I think it's worse than that. I think it's like 5-1.
All right. Keller will take 20 gold at 5-1. That's an insane thing for 2 people. Just mathematically, Keller's against that being allowed.
Sure. The bookie, who happens to also be the bartender, will happily, take that bet in and jot it down on this impromptu ledger he's made. One of the sailors who, to all of you, Alvaron, you know that this is a captain, but all of you, you can tell that this is a very senior member of this bar. Kind of steps forward as keeper or Talama begins to circle around to get into a so that you're roughly equidistant in the center of this place, not just immediately going in for the fight, but actually setting up. This captain will walk forward and say, "Boy, well, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a good old-fashioned fight with the keeper. The bet, as usual, is knowledge or an ass whooping, as they do say. You place your bets at the bar. This currently is a no magic, no weapon fight. So you all know what that means," as the crowd goes, "Yeah!" And then they kind of raise their hands. All right. I want a clean fight. Anything goes except for the rules I just said. Step back out of the way. Medea, so you see Talama kind of like, get into a stance. Their, legs are a little bit spread out wide, but not too wide. And now you can see they flex, and just standing casually, you could tell that this was an extremely not the least of which was because you could see all of their upper body muscles. But when they flex, you can see their like lats and traps, like clearly, even though you're looking at them head on, like this is a very well muscled person. They're just not excessively built. It's just that all over each muscle is well defined. They look at you and they wait.
Medea opens with they take a second, and as they're sort of like getting into position, they're waiting for them to charge too as well. They assume this person is initially was a little bit more aggressive. So one by one, they start taking their steps forward, and they say, "Now, there was a bird born in a treetop 1,000 miles above the ground. And below them, they could see the whole earth. Even through the clouds, it was perfectly visible. And from these clouds, from this nest, they saw a mouse, shimmering and clad in silver and gold, and every metal one could dream of. And they were told by the other birds that if they were to leave this nest and to chase it, gather anything on the ground, then they would not fly again. But this bird was fine with it, because above these clouds there was little else. There was nests above towers and nothing else. And so they made the same trade every other bird made. They flew to the ground, and as soon as they did, they saw their kin born at the same time as them who had made the same choice. They would not stay in those nests forever. But As they were, they flew to the trees chasing this singular mouse. And as they did, they made one wrong turn. And as they collapsed into the trees, their wings clipped, one of them unassailed. And as they do, they go forward and they take another step next to them. Their heavy feet and their body weight shifted entirely on almost their lower end as the stomp of their foot hits the wood. Now, do you think the bird would catch this mouse on their first attempt? Wing clipped as they dived towards it. And they take another step towards them.
How close are you at this point?
I'd say about 10 feet.
Okay. They're still waiting.
Mhm.
They say, well, honestly, I hate parables, but I imagine not.
It is good for you that this is not a parable, then. And they take another step forward.
If you get into the 5 feet range and there's even like after a second, you haven't made a strike,
Mhm.
they will hit you. I'm not going to do initiative since you both had plenty of time to mount. They're just going to go first.
Okay.
So, the first blow goes straight for like the kind of armpit in your armor.
Mhm.
Oops, sorry.
Your rolls are still private.
I just revealed it.
Oh.
Striking true as you feel out from this like this closed fist, your body reverberates. It's certainly not the most damage you've ever taken from a strike. However,
Mhm.
is immediately followed up with 3 more.
Miss, hit.
Okay. So you're kind of maybe like you take the first blow. They didn't go for like your face, which was probably where you were expecting, since the only part of you not covered in steel.
Mhm.
But they don't. They kind of jab a couple times. The blows do deflect away as you move enough to cause them to ring the breastplate. Despite fist hitting steel, they don't seem that bothered by it. But the last blow kind of you think they're about to knee you, but instead they kick you as you kind of go sprawling slightly to one side.
Mhm.
They end reposing themselves and awaiting any reply.
Mhm. And they say, and they run, and they sort of return this. They're just opening up with a few basic strikes. And as they're doing this, there's a little bit of anxiety on their face, but I think they've committed to this enough. So they'll make 2 unarmed attacks, which is, I think, just everybody has proficiency with them, so
Correct,
that's
yeah.
just d20 plus 8. D20 plus 8.
Hit.
Assume it's a hit and a miss.
Yeah, hit and miss.
So the first one is a hit, and that's just 4 damage, I think, flat. And they're just sort of getting their bearings for this.
I think it's you have a +4.
Yeah.
It's 5, I believe. It's
Oh, okay.
1 plus strength.
Mhm. They're mostly seeing how they handle this. If this is somebody who's quote unquote fragile, if they can throw a punch, but if they can take it.
Where does this first punch land? What does it look like?
I think they're just going straight for the center of the stomach. Like they're seeing how they handle a gut punch.
Okay, you feel like you've just impacted onto like a breastplate of your own.
Mhm.
It definitely you're wearing a gauntlet. It hurts, but they kind of just take it and ready themselves to immediately block your next blow.
And they back up and they say, now, they would scour the lands for this mouse on their feet. Their wings would no longer work, and they would run and run and run. And they realized one day that they needed to grow a little, and so they found themselves a place high in the mountains. a place where the sky touched a little closer and where their vision was better. And they watched and watched and watched until one day they saw it. They flew after it. After they came back, the nest was gone. And they wait for them to return, earn the strikes.
They move in, kind of switching up from a mainly fist fighting style to like lots of spinny kicks, and will do one strike. 19 against the armor. Strike 19 against the armor. I will flurry of blows again. This is a monk. I would just tell everyone that if it wasn't clear from the unarmed strike.
Yeah.
What?
A monk.
A monk?
A monk?
You don't what?
Hit.
So was that one hit? What's your AC right now?
22. Okay. They still have their shield with them.
Okay, so you're like punching with one hand, but you've got your shield up. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're getting in hits, but you are super well armored. Like no reasonable brawler on the street would even attempt this. So they're hitting steel. They're getting.
Oh, wait, sorry. None of them hit.
Yeah. I got it. They're getting in hits in terms of they're making contact, but they're not doing damage beneath the armor and padding. Really, the one blow that seems like it's about to clock you in the face, you do manage to get your shield up. They say, not bad.
And they'll return the blows as they say. 1 second. I'll do the numbers really quick. D20 plus 8. Yeah, definitely not hitting with a nat 1. 2 non-hits, as they say. Now, as a child, I watched this bird fall and fail and hit its face on the ground as many times as it took. I was not very impressed with this bird. And so I left home, thinking, why are all the animals around me so incapable of even the easiest tasks? And as their blows don't hit, they almost laugh to themselves because, this doesn't look great for them. But neither of them are really making that much progress on the other person, it seems like.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just literally just.
There's an easier way to do unarmed strikes.
So both your attacks miss. There's a period where they're exchanging blows, and it's clear that if you weren't wearing armor, they would be crushing you absolutely. You get you make a couple attempts, but they completely dodge out of the way without really. They're going to do 4 more attacks. The first 2 then. So the first one definitely connects, and this is just like you're going in. You think that they're going for a low blow, so you kind of put your shield down as they connect with your chin. As they do so, you can almost feel like this blow. They seem to have finally processed your fighting style fully, and they have now adjusted slightly. With the second hit, I'm going to spend a key point to do focused aim. So I'm going to increase, spend one, I'll click on it. I spend 1 key point. I spend 1 key point to raise the attack roll by 2, making the 21 a 23. So another blow that seems like it's going to be a miss kind of redirects, hitting you in the knee. At which point, now they really. But the second strike is also going to be a stunning strike. So I need you to make a con save. The wisdom.
Yes. It's wisdom plus proficiency bonus on top of 8.
You fail. It's
Mhm.
they're not that wise actually, but it's still 16.
Mhm.
So you feel as they like hit your knee, like your body seizes up. And so they now have advantage, and we're just going to thrash you.
Does stun give advantage?
Does it not?
Double
Yeah,
check.
it does.
Okay, I thought so.
It definitely does. Stunned is like the worst condition.
You take 2 more blows as you are just rocked by this sudden
Mhm.
kind of, you maybe were feeling like, oh, well, all their previous attacks just hit armor, and then they absolutely rock you with a bunch of solid hits.
Mhm.
That's going to be their turn. They kind of back up, and they'll they're not
that's
like completely relaxing, but they'll say, we can stop now if you want.
Stunning strike is till the end of its next turn.
Yeah. Medea thinks about it for a second and says, I feel I've committed to this. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail.
Sure. You're stunned, but they will pause long enough for you to continue your story.
Mhm. They say, and when I left home, I found a quaint little village, and I left it, and I came back, and it was gone. Now, the point of this is, one day, as I was leaving the village, we had all heard a story. The story of a very fine, very beautiful elk that lived out in the woods. And we would chase it day in and day out. And it was a literal elk, I promise you. Every day we would run and we would try and find it. The kids would try to make these little maps of it. And nobody really could. Some would say they'd spot it on these journeys, but none of us did. And when someone finally caught a real ear of it, caught a real eye, you could tell, because there was a sparkle and a shimmer to their voice. There was an unmistakable moment of excitement. Everybody for the next day would go running around in the woods with their spears and their bows. And they'll, yeah.
Yeah, at this point is when they are going to hit you a few more times. They probably won't
Mhm.
knock you out from it, but maybe. You're stunned, but they still flurry of blows, which I think is, some people might consider like a little bit excessive, but this person isn't bothered.
I mean, Medea did say they wanted to lose. Like, they'd
Mhm.
set their path. This is respectful.
Okay, yeah, that just brings me down.
Okay, yeah, I think they just like it's very quick. It's like punch, 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 knee to jaw as you fall away. They all of the pirates like gold, very actually really small amount of gold exchanged his hands because everybody was betting on the clear favorite. But Kelly, you obviously lose your bet of 20 gold.
That's all right. That was that gnomish pickpockets.
They will pull out a potion from their belt, uncork it with the mouth, spit it out, and then just kind of splash it over your face. As you heal 2d4 plus 2.
Colors are making extensive notes about the end of the fight.
As you are coming to, they're kind of like on their, squatting down, leaning over you, and they just say, how's it end?
Well, I can't tell you. The fight's over.
Fair enough. And they'll reach out there. They'll put their hand out.
And they grab the hand and they say, but if you had to come with a fitting end for the story, how would you end it?
Well, it was a happy story. Find the elk, take it back to town, He hailed a hero. It was a true story. You lose the elk, go back to town, and find everybody dead.
And they stand up and they say, but that's not the end of the story, is it? What happens after the hunter finds the elk? If it was the good story, what does a hunter do if they do find this elk?
Well, in a story, they become rich, famous, and wealthy. In real life, maybe they do. Maybe a nice elk.
And perhaps they come to a bar and tell stories.
They do. And they'll lift you up, slap you on the back as everybody goes, yeah! They'll lean in and say, don't be discouraged. You're still the number one for maybe the year, maybe. Number
Next
two,
time-
maybe for the year.
At some point I might come back with Ack and challenge you with a weapon, but I still fear that would end poorly.
Swords against fists is not particularly good. So spears or what have you. They'll look around and swig now a huge gulp of rum. Probably several gulps actually from this glass. So, you fought, you lost, but it was acceptable. It was good enough.
Yes.
I heard a story.
Medea says, as part of the fight, you never said we had to win.
No, I did not. It's not a condition. I just wanted to fight. The various sailors are like going around Medea. The tables are all being returned. They're going around and like you get like a couple pats in the back, a couple rum chits are placed down in front of you, and there's a mixture of like not bad, but nobody beats Keeper. And like various, phrases like that from all these sailors. And Keeper will, kind of like let them go by. This seems to be like part of the order of things here at this particular tavern.
As somebody is like commenting to Medea that nobody beats Keeper, Silverin just kind of asks Alvaron in an undertone, "Well, have you tried?"
Alvaron, as Alvaron is setting up chairs and tables, just kind of laughs and goes, "You don't always get a choice in fighting Keeper." Looks over at the bar. Keep setting up chairs. You might get a choice in how badly you lose. And with a wink at Silverin, keeps setting everything up.
Silverin helps him like adjust a chair as he's getting it down and just pats him kind of heavily on the shoulder, nods, and then steps away.
Can I make a roll to know about Ki and how you could theoretically view that as magic?
Sure, you could make a roll.
Arcana? That was a 20 for such
Hovered
a long
over that
time.
20 for me.
Good. 21. Yeah, so you like this person was moving with preternatural speed, and now that you're looking at them, you have a strong suspicion. Talama looks like they're late 20s, early 30s, but you have a sneaking suspicion that they're actually much older than that. You're not sure how much. Really, it's impossible to say. But from what you know is that certain fighters, certain schools of fighters are able to use this sort of internal energy. Some people say it's magic. It's certainly not like spellcasting magic, but people argue it's similar enough to the way that sorcerers do things, just expressed in a different kind of way. What you do know is that it requires a certain amount of musculature and dedication to the physical form to achieve.
Ella makes some notes and starts to write like that Ki is magic, and thusly this fight was unfair. And if you can use Key, then you should be able to use Smite. In which case, Medea should have had a better chance, and this was rigged from the start. That she will submit somewhere to some academic paper that she hopes comes back to Talama.
Medea takes a second, and they roll their shoulders, and they just use healing hands to bring themselves back up to half. And it's almost like it's very obviously magical looking, as like their wounds just suddenly close themselves, and they sit down at the bar.
Talama has gone back to this sort of facing back outwards, almost like they're. And now that you're kind of all looking at it, it's like they're like, you know, the captain, king, lord, whatever, the leader surveying their lands as they like scan the bar to see how everybody is doing. They have since had 2 cups of rum and look a little flushed.
Silverin settles into place next to Medea, looks them over, kind of decides that they meet his threshold for, you know, being able to move around, and just passes them one of the drinks that Uba had collected.
Medea takes it and accepts it.
Keeper will kind of look around and say, so, I have a sailor, a Gathite, kobold, wizard, and
A loser in a fight. They smile and wave a
they
hand.
kind of think about it for a minute. A paladin, fighter. Asking me about...
Can Keller raise her hand?
Yes.
Why did you label the humanoids by their job and not by their race, but you did for the 2 that are non-humans?
Because we're in ROMs. And it's more notable.
Points at Medea's like deep purple skin.
Silverin,
Keller kind of shrugs and says, "It's just curious."
perhaps it is not clear that I am a cleric, he says, with all of his various, very clerical totems sort of jangling.
They kind of just blink at you.
Keller
So-
wishes she prepared seeming to make everybody non-human.
Where'd you hear this?
A person came to tell us a prophecy, a task that we were supposed to undertake. But to tell you would be a story.
I'm chock full of them. It's all they let me do these days. Well, I can tell you, you're in for some shit. This is the story I heard from a friend of a friend. A friend. He's older, scholarly. You don't need it. But about 4 months ago, maybe, a ship was attacked in the Lemanian Sea by a dragon, sea dragon. Now, this wasn't particularly notable at the time, since many ships had been attacked by sea dragons, or a sea dragon. But it was notable because this ship decided to do something. A few of the passengers aboard, they had a secret, an object that this sea dragon was hunting, a particular object of the sea. So they hired a ship, went out to sea, took the object to where it led them. They plot to keep the count around. Are any of you familiar with Primordial Dragons?
What would the role be for
This-
that?
This would be an Arcana or I would take any of the main knowledge checks. Arcana, religion.
This wouldn't count for Iracondus, right? Like he's not a primordial dragon.
No, it would not.
Nope.
Okay.
He's just a gem dragon. Or she. Sorry.
22 Arcana for Keller.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So, Kelly, you've definitely read about these things. They're supposed to be like really old dragons, sort of akin to deities, minor deities in terms of like power scale. Supposedly, they were all sealed away somehow by the gods a lot of time. That's kind of where your knowledge starts to fade out. There's, that there's like a fire one, an air one, a water, earth. I think that's it. Instead of like where your knowledge kind of is the extent of it.
Yeah, Keller says, yeah, they're sealed away elemental dragons, something like that. She kind of looks around to see if anybody will approve that knowledge.
Those of you who rolled a religion did not roll high enough to discern a significant amount of information. Medea, you've heard of these before in reference to like the gods sealed away the primordial dragons. You don't know much about the dragons themselves because it's more in relation to what the god did than what the dragon was.
I've heard of them being locked away, but that's it. I could probably tell you which gods did it, but that's about it.
Solverin doesn't associate, even obliquely, the fire demon that came from being locked away to kill his people with this, does he?
No, you probably wouldn't make that connection. They're from what you know, dragons and demons generally are not related, except for in a couple of cases of the show. They kind of nod. That's about it. This one was the one of the sea, sealed long ago by well, it was this particular item was capable of freeing. This party opened the door, not really knowing what they were, and met with the dragon. One of them, or at least so I was told, made a deal, and they became something more than what they were. And even before that, they wrapped themselves in seaweed. They shut the door to the dragon, but, well, a pact was struck. What I assume or prophecy might relate to. They, like, as you're all saying, they're thinking back and take another sip. So, tell you that at least before the bargain was struck, they were a we'll say witch named Madge. I never had the occasion to meet them, but I heard stories even before this. Very exacting.
Above board, because I'm starting to lose my focus.
Yes.
Did she give us a timeline for this?
She said that this happened supposedly about 4-ish months ago, maybe a little.
Thank you.
They ain't like give you a specific date, but it
Yeah,
happened
I
within
knew
this
you'd
year.
said something, but 4.5 months. Got it.
Did your friend? Could we talk to your friend that told you the story?
You could probably look that up. Name's Morgan. Morgan.
Did they say anyone else that went in case we can't find them?
They start to fill up a pipe. Light it. Yeah, a few others. And they'll list all the names.
Great. It was Morgan, Fair, Ty, and August, right? Were the other four? Oh, and Mud. Great. We can just have Alvaron have some reunions with his crewmate members from earlier in the game.
Absolutely perfect.
Keller kind of when it's obvious that Talama has finished the answer to our question, kind of says, well, we could and should probably avail ourselves of the library to research some things. But then maybe we should try and track down one of these 5.
Silver nods.
Alvaron, you do remember Morgan. They were a member of the Pale Dawn about a year ago, but they didn't stick around that long. The other
What sort of
and
option did they move
Fair as
on
well.
to? Do I remember?
To the best of your knowledge, they booked work on a merchant ship heading north.
Okay.
And they'll say, any other prophecies?
I'll look around at the rest of the group for that. I got what I came here for.
I mean, there were 2 other parts to that one prophecy. It would seem remiss to not use your information if you have it. And Keller will
Doing anything else? They won't let.
Keller will attempt to. There's like a sympathy on Keller's face at like how trapped this person seems to be, but she's more interested in the knowledge about stuff, I think, and she recites the second 2 parts of the prophecy.
They kind of searching for a second. Grab like a rag and wipe some of the sweat off of them from the fight, a little that they built up. Well, probably the third part is about Saliel, thrice thwarted, thrice stand. Gods, the blight, etc. I'm not sure about the second. I stay away from nobles, but well, I could introduce you to somebody if you know somebody, a member of the nobility.
Keller nods and I think retrieves, asks Alvaron for the notes that she gave him yesterday.
No issue giving those. No.
And Keller like hands them to the keeper and says, "Next time one of us needs something, we might tell you the story of the prophecy. But here are the notes I took in case they're interesting."
I'll like actually kind of look at them for. Huh. It sounds like an adventure worthy of my youth. Good luck.
Keller smiles. Turns to the others and says, well, we could stay here and get drunk. Keller is like halfway through one drink.
Keeper kind of nods, like, that's a good idea.
Or we could go and do our research today in case these things have a more pressing urgency than perhaps would be prudent to drink. Keller like feels too many eyes on her at the same time and is like, this is harder than I thought it would be when I started this sentence.
They'll say, well, my vote is that you stay here and have a few drinks, and maybe we even have another fight. Who knows? But the other thing I should probably tell you, now that you've mentioned this and I'm putting two and two together, if I were you, I would head to Minden Port. Strange happenings there of late. Might be unrelated. It's the closest place to where all went down.
Keller makes a note.
Silver nods, and I mislike dawdling.
Maribeth is meanwhile sitting at the end of the bar, looking like they don't know what to do with themselves.
I'm good at insight in this moment. Keller says to maybe the group, including Maribeth, and kind of walks over to be closer to Maribeth and says, maybe some of us can stay and drink and maybe fight some more. I can't fight without magic, so I should maybe be doing research. And kind of looks at Maribeth and says, you could join me.
Hey,
Kind of looks at the others as two groups start to form.
I think Uba's definitely going to stay here. They say, I'm not sure how much help I could be doing research. I can read Infernal, but other than that, I am probably better at fighting and drinking.
Silver just
little
nods.
one, I'll show you the exquisite art of hitting them in the legs.
Uba gets like eye shine, like they're so excited.
Silver just nods to Maribeth and to Kella, like equally, and I am still not the best of researchers. And he looks at the keeper and says, perhaps not of fighters either, but one of you may need healing eventually. Looks at Medea, who handled their own, and takes another drink, sitting squarely on his stool.
I don't think we're getting in any fights today, so. Any more fights, at least.
You never know. Day's young.
I start walking out.
So
Yes.
half the party's staying, half the party's leaving. Is that right? Or who's staying? I know Uba.
Yeah, Uba and also Kojin, I guess.
Yep.
I don't
Could
think
have used
Kojin would
Kojin
be
as a
good at
book
research.
pack animal.
Silver will stick with Uba.
Okay.
Medea's going to the library. They still have the mark from Mouth, right?
Like of the entry one or whatever.
Yeah, for borrowing books and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think Kella knows about it, so I think Medea will pull them outside the bar and explain it to them, and like show them the mark, and say like, if you've never been to a library before, if you show them this, this will give you the opportunity to access most things that are normally restricted. Some things are still off bounds, but.
Keller nods very respectfully and listens to everything as you are an authority figure from her childhood. And then at the end says, yeah, Will explained and drew me a picture of it. And she shows you in the spell book, like this whole thing about how Melf gave the three of you this mark for when you went to Rams. But she did listen to your entire lecture about it.
EMD says, if you're going to the library, I'm going to head to see if I can find any religious halls and see if they have any knowledge there, and we can sort of split our work that way.
Keller nods and says, I think, and she looks at Marylveth and says, I think I'm going to look at prophecies first to see if there's any consistencies through the prophecies, but then maybe we'll look at Saliel. Well, I guess we know most of what we're going to find about Saliel.
I could see if I can find any specific books on where Saliel's lairs were or what she tends to prefer for her minions. That kind of
Keller
thing.
nods and says, what I developed when I was very young, a spell that lets me read very quickly. So if you borrow books, I can go through them pretty quickly and make some cliff notes about it.
I'll see if I can find ones that otherwise would be a bit too much to really parse in a reasonable amount of time. Perhaps see if we can find some histories of the gods or demon sightings.
Keller nods. Okay. And Marveth, do you want to look for something in particular, or you can help me find books while I'm reading? I could dictate what my findings to you, and you can practice writing in common.
Sure. That sounds good.
She does take an affectation of Will when she's talking to Marveth, as Will is the only teacher she's ever known. So,
he immediately begins to follow you like a lost dog.
Great. I secretly hope the three of us get into a fight and you guys have to just drink.
So the party sort of splits. By the time this is all finishing, it's passed from early afternoon to sort of mid-afternoon. Food starts being served at the lighthouse fire, while the other of you head off to the library to go and those of you who stay, Keeper continues to drink heavily throughout your chatting with them. Uba, they kind of run you through a little bit of a like. So what do you actually know about fighting, kind of thing? So they like see you with your daggers, watch you with the bow, kind of thing. They run you through like a couple they put their palms up. They're like, okay, give me some punches, kind of thing. I'm curious, Uba, how do you feel about this person being like, okay, I'm gonna like kind of train you a little bit?
I think if there hadn't been like this display of their abilities beforehand, Uba probably would have taken offense. But since they saw they know how good Medea is at fighting, and since this person kind of gave Medea a beat down, I think they're actually pretty pumped to hear what this person has to say.
All right. Yeah, they're kind of running you through, and Algron, you know that this is somewhat unusual. Keeper fights a lot of people, but they don't teach their stuff really. You must have caught them in a good mood, or put them in a good mood, rather. And to Uba, they will ask, so, tell me about your group. Know each other?
I think that you said this is late afternoon, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think at this
mid to late afternoon.
Okay, I think at this point Uba might be a little drunk, so they might be a little bit more chit-chatty than they normally would be and say, well, known each other for about a year and a half, and we've been on the most absurd adventures you could possibly imagine. To be perfectly honest, it's been a great group to travel with, but I don't know, we've seen some strange and concerning things in our travels, and it sounds like we'll be seeing a few more.
Strange and concerning things abound, really.
I think Uba kind of raises their they have a human-sized tankard, so they raise it up with two hands and are like, ain't that the truth? And take a big chug.
Has the keeper's voice been going back and forth, or has it stayed clear?
It seems to kind of go back and forth as they deal. You get the sense that it's like more of an affectation than anything. Although they do probably smoke a full satchel while you're sitting there. Pipe weed or tobacco. They to Uba. Lose anyone yet?
I'm trying to remember with Medea. Did we actually see that, or was that like a vision of what
Think-
could have been?
We just, in the moment, it was described that Will's counterspell worked, that everybody saw themselves dying, except for Will, who saw everyone dying, and then like counterspelled it.
I got you. If that's the case, I think Uba's gonna say, surprisingly, no. Turns out we actually fight pretty well together. Despite finding, and I think normally Uba wouldn't say this, but they say despite fighting demons and shadow dragons, and they just start like listing out all of the things that we've fought, kind of rambling.
Give it time. They take another
That's so
swing.
brutal.
I think that like slightly sours Uba's mood, but just for like half a second, and says, actually no, I don't think Uba says anything. They just kind of like stare into their drink. They're having like a mini existential crisis.
Flashback to when they were having that mortality issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point in his like the fact that he's been running like trading caravans and something, as like the keeper comes to the end of their satchel, the Silverin will just offer a small like a pipe's full over to him or them, and to Uba say, one goes on.
They glance around the room. A couple like extra people have walked in, and you notice that they meet somebody's gaze. Alvaron, you also, your eye line follows this if you've been watching everything. This is a fellow who, in your estimation, does not know the rules because they are staring. They're staring too much at a very particular area. You all see over the course of the talk, the keeper was very happy, but they seem to, for really no discernible reason, have turned slightly sour again. And upon noticing this, you see them get up, walk over to the fellow, who gives them a wide smile, and then promptly pick them up and toss them through a table before going back and taking their seat again. Everybody just like looking at him and just shaking their heads before they go back to what they're doing.
I think Uba just says, do you usually greet newcomers like that?
Only if they don't know the rules. There's really three. Don't talk to me unless you have something to say. Don't stare at me unless you're going to say something. If you do say something, make sure it's good.
Silverin finds himself just nodding with the like spirit of somebody who has found like kinship.
Silverin's got a crush.
Meanwhile, we cut back over to the others. You have found your way back kind of up the hill towards the Lyceum. Well, there's a few libraries in the city. Did you want to go to the Lyceum one? There's also like there's the Royal Library, which is kind of in the central sort of government district of everything. There's also what's sometimes called the Penny Library, which is down kind of out in the second or third wall. Um, it's just as large, but it's easier to get into, we'll say.
I think Keller will probably follow Medea, provided Medea is going to the Lyceum Library. Otherwise, we'll suggest
Yes.
that's where we should go.
And I think during the route, they also just like Medea essentially brainstorms with Kella like what books they want to pull, and then like Medea, at least for Kella, will like as Kella starts on them, they'll start bringing more and more down, so they can just like work through it basically.
Yeah. Keller also is going to look for a spell book that has Bestow Curse in it. Because the talk of hags made her think of curses.
Yeah, so you guys get up to the Lyceum Library. Maribeth is kind of like looking around. As you enter in, there's the common Scrivener's section in a large round. This one in particular in the large round dome. Everything kind of you can just see the shelves go up high. Almost certainly, magically, this room has been enchanted to be bigger on the inside than it's on the outside, and it is already quite large on the outside. You are let in pretty swiftly by one of the Alamanian acolytes. Can I get you guys to let me know what are you looking for apart from the Bestow Curse, and can you make me an investigation check? Maribeth, I will say, will give advantage to.
All right. So Keller also casts skill empowerment on investigation. As like she steps into the library and sees the amount of books. She's so used to like books where she knows every single book in the library, and this is like a sea of unknown information. So she draws a sigil that's different to the history sigil for that. But I think Keller's looking specifically for prophecies because during the conversation with Keeper, her thought process was that nothing about Barn said that we had to do anything about these things. So maybe if I can see prophecies and how they've been actioned in the past, I will learn if we're meant to alert people about these three things, or if we are meant to go deal with them, or if we are meant to pick and choose. So she's going to focus almost entirely on prophecies and find a better basis of understanding of them.
And Medea, what are you primarily?
I think at the moment they're looking for essentially like very. I imagine they'd have this stuff like very clinical texts on like the last demon sightings in major areas and the names of like major demons and ancient dragon texts. And the links between like stuff like during the blight and stuff, like theoretical conjectures and books written on like how demonic magic interacts with dragons and especially powerful beings. And then just a lot of basic stuff on like when and where like historical accounts have people seen demons in between now and like the last blight. So like historians and archivalists' records, that kind of thing.
Okay, go ahead and make your rolls.
Investigation. Okay. 24.
So, Calandra, you go, look in the books. There's a couple, there's a section on like divination, a section on part of history's, ancient prophecies, modern prophecies, their interpretations. Some which are somewhat widely known, but it's unclear if they've come to pass yet, and people kind of speculate. There's one prophecy which historians have argued like foretold the blight, and some say no, like these things that you're like conflating with these events, like you're misinterpreting the text here as not referring to this event, kind of thing. So there is like a lot of room for like interpretation with these sorts of things. They're not always super clear. Generally, when a prophecy is presented to a person, because sometimes the prophecies are just they come to the seer, and they're just about the world, or maybe they're about somebody, but they're not necessarily like being told to that person when the prophecy arrives. But when somebody is given a prophecy specifically, generally it means, from your reading, you discover this, that they are in some way integral to the words they're in. Sometimes it's that something is going to happen to this person, and they might not have that much control over it. Sorry. So sort of like, this prophecy is about me, but it's going to happen if I do something or not. Some people like to try to go against prophecies when they're obviously bad, which usually does not work. Usually, when you try to run from a prophecy, it tends to happen to you anyways. Sometimes prophecies can be told that to a person, and it actually ends up being about somebody else. Generally, that happens when the person dies, and kind of things just happen so that prophecy still comes true, but not about the one it was foretold. As you're like comparing these words to other one, none of you are mentioned by name or even by description, which suggests to you that if you did nothing, the prophecy probably, the things in here are still going to happen or come to pass. But they might have little effect on you, or at least the same effect on you as they do everybody else. It's not necessarily that you're going to be drawn into what's happening here if you don't choose to do it, from your reading of this particular prophecy.
Yeah, so I think, firstly, Kella collects a bunch of books to this effect, and while reading them, she takes her rainbow quill and she touches it to the side of her head, and it just vanishes as her eyes, the entire eye becomes rainbow colored, while she triggers her reading spell. And then she's dictating all this out. But as she's doing it, she's dictating what she wants Maraveth to write down. But also, as she gets to that bit, she's like cross-referencing that with what Farn said about severed threads not mattering. Like the severed thread sometimes is not important, and if like she takes this whole thing of like, so if we were all to die, the prophecy would find someone else to cling to. The prophecy will happen no matter what, but we are the current holders of the thread of this prophecy, and she's like writing that as her main core understanding of the thing, that like this is a thing for us to deal with until we are either dead or the threads are severed, and then somebody else will have to deal with it. So it is a thing we could opt out of, sort of.
You also, as you're reading along and writing this down and thinking about it, you very strongly suspect that Farn left a bit out, because there's not really a consequence in here. And prophecies almost always have a consequence. And you can only assume that this was intentional.
So we see like Kella sitting at this table, and she's reading these books so quickly. She's like every couple of seconds flipping a page across, absorbing that page, flipping a page across, and she just full stops, like mid-page. The page is halfway to being turned, and she turns to Maraveth and says, "What are the reasons that one could have for not completing a prophecy? Why would you not tell the targets of the prophecy the consequence?"
I'm gonna have to make a roll. I'll roll she next time?
Sure. She will start with like her positations of it and say,
That
she says, so I think you would I will see him struggle and chronal shift that back. To give him like hopefully a moment of better insight. I don't know if this is insight, but like a moment where and she's like, so either I think you don't tell the people in case the consequence is so dire that they refuse to engage with the prophecy.
Mm.
Or if the consequence is not to them. I can't think of other reasons.
he kind of nods. He says, yes, perhaps it foretells of the death of one or both of us. Maybe. Maybe this person was sort of like fate personified. Maybe telling us would reveal something that we don't need to know yet. Something that might change our courses of action. What?
She nods and says, maybe. Yes, maybe the last part of the prophecy would be so significant that it would alter our behavior immediately, and that is not what fate required of us.
It is a riddle within this riddle.
If it was that one or all of us would die in the attempt, I wonder what that would mean for whether we would continue.
I know Silverin. They surely would not hesitate. I'm afraid that I don't know the rest of you. Only what Silverin was told.
Well, I suppose when Silverin was explaining me, it was not as an adult, competent wizard. Maybe it would have been better if Will had come back. And she kind of looks at all these scribblings and like she's writing stuff as well while she's dictating it, but her writing has just been very cyclical. Like she is dictating the good notes and her writing is like, why would you do this? Then reasons why, and then like, what does that mean? And then it just leads back to why. And she's written it almost in a circle, just as her thoughts have gone in that manner. She says,
Maybe if the line was there, you'd have them comment. Maybe that would be bad.
I don't think they would come.
For the record, Silverin has told many stories of the group, and perhaps more stories of Kella herself than Kella would expect, because he does like children.
Kella doesn't view herself as integral to the other stories, so just assumes that she was a like footnote. It says, well, okay. Fawn left something out. That's fine. He also said we're never going to see him again, so the chance is that we'll never learn the end of this prophecy. So if there is something unknowable, to focus on something unknowable is at the detriment of yourself. So we should disregard the unknowable, because only Fawn can complete the prophecy. And there's like a flashback to when Will was forcing her to think about a question that had literally no answer for 3 days, and she was getting obsessed with it.
We can't learn what we don't know. We're not going to find the rest of the prophecy in a book. I don't think.
Kella,
we don't have time to look through every book.
I'd have to teach everyone the spells. and her eyes are like vibrant rainbow as she's looking at him, and she says, "But if I was a betting woman, and starting today I was, I would suggest that if 3 is an auspicious number and the prophecy came in 3 parts, and there's something about fate tied to 3, maybe we will meet not Farn, but another that will reveal the prophecy to us in time."
Maybe there will be 3 sets of 3. 9 is
Maybe.
unlucky.
Then it will 3 sets, 2 sets of 3, and a third set of 1.
Maybe.
To say that we did it. The final one is a victory line. Keller looks at the notes that he's taking in common, and with her reading capability, just like flash reads the pages that are in front of him and says, "They're very good. Better than my Gathite, probably." But then goes back to reading and explaining the things.
For Medea, so you've looked into these kinds of things before, so you already have a general knowledge.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the reason it's is because they already have their big tomes specifically of all of the kinds of demons.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is like cross-referencing, basically seeing if like, you can see like, oh, this appears in both. This is like especially notable as like a sea demon or like that kind of thing.
So as far as like demon sightings, I would say there have been enough that to enumerate like all of the demon sightings would be impossible for me to do here, and impossible for Medea to
it's
really collect in a neat fashion. As far as common sightings where it's like a regular recurrence, obviously the dwarf roads, but you dismiss that because that's so obvious it's not really worth like thinking about.
Yeah.
There is the Broken Road. There's pretty frequent demon sightings down there, particularly around old Garan, which is just south of where you are now, really. Not all that far by ship, really. You also know that the of the seas, the Lemanian seas is said to be the roughest. And there have been, demon fish sightings there on occasion. The Ray Sea has been plagued historically by Mariluffs of different varieties. So you're kind of like looking all this over. Those were all different kinds of.
What did you say the name of the city was?
Garan. G-E-R-A.
Thank you. Yeah, I see, because they're almost triangulating is the wrong word, but they're trying to see if like these locations have any commonalities between them, or if they're just like major trade routes.
So, from what you know, Old Garan, which is now sunk, the Gulf of Rams, that was hit hard during the Blood. And the entirety of the Broken Road still kind of has demon problems from that time. They're not as bad as they once were, but it's also close to the mountains. There's lots of exits there, so demons can get into that area. Not quite as well defended as the Seer Riverlands, which are in the northern parts of the Romanian Empire. And they're just poorer. They were like hit a lot harder. A lot of the Broken Broders, as they're somehow called, moved to Le Mans after the Blight. So like the people who are still there are like the people who refused to leave, essentially.
This is a weird question, but I think Medea would have this question. Do these sightings occur with any particular frequency with relation to like parts of the year or even like celestial events?
Certainly, more demons tend to be cited in the winter time when the days are shorter. As far as like celestial event, during eclipses, demons are said to come out more in force, and the kind of accepted knowledge that Syl and Herodor are distracted, that their gazes are preoccupied with one another. To feel.
It's a period of instability in the gods.
Yeah, there's a sort of chaos or freedom that happens. It is not supposed to happen, really speaking.
So,
Good.
I think Medea gets back to Kella with some of this, and they say we should probably chart out the next few months and days as it gets closer to the deep end of winter, and is Imris like Earth, where eclipses take place roughly the same within the same frequency?
They are extraordinarily regular.
Is there a specific like distance or day there is one from now, and then like the interval?
You could look that up. It's not like a yearly basis kind of thing, and it's not something you would know off the top of your head. But it's fairly easy to research. The next eclipse is supposed to be at roughly the end of this year. It's actually somewhat, as you're looking at it now, maybe suspiciously, it occurs on New Day, which is the day between the years.
Okay, that makes sense. And is it like Earth, where like there's total eclipses is a different thing from like these regular occurring ones? Like those are like, because like solar eclipses happen a few times every year, but it's like total eclipses are like when you have like the big blackout we see.
So in Imris, there are only total eclipses.
Okay.
How many days is it till New Day?
And
also, Keller suggests to you we should chart it that surely somebody else has charted that, and we could find their chart in this library.
And is it like Earth, where the eclipse affects a specific part of the planet, or is it just like the whole planet is covered by the eclipse?
Sorry, I misspoke. It's on the last day of New Week, the week in between. I missed the question. What was the question?
Does the eclipse cover the entirety of Imris when it happens, or just parts of it?
The entirety. It's an entirely different sort of celestial event that does not work as our eclipse.
Also, Imris is flat. Keller's a flat Imriser.
And are we super close? How many days off are we from that? Like not even like just like exactly.
I think Andrew's doing the maths from when I asked that.
So I will tell you for the calendar nerds, I guess. It is currently the 7th month of the year, known as Forlin. It is the 13th day of the month. There are 5-day weeks. There are 5 weeks in a month. 30, 90.
We tasked Marylveth with doing that maths, and we're hearing it like out loud. How many months in the year?
There are 13. If you
so each month is 25 days.
Each month is 30 days.
So you said each month was 5 weeks of 5 days.
Yeah.
5 weeks of 5 days
of 5 days.
Okay. All right, you do the maths. Keller will essentially go over the conversation that they had with Maribeth about the missing piece of the prophecy, which is like the consequence of failure, and
Mhm.
why the reasons it could have been left out.
You have 155 days until that eclipse.
Medea is gonna say as they're gonna say this. Perhaps
152 days.
perhaps it's that the fate of that is indeterminate.
Maybe. The other prophecies tend to have a consequential aspect, a truth of failure.
Perhaps failure in this case has wide-reaching implications for the nature of fate itself.
Killer nods and says, maybe. But we
something
don't
that-
know.
Something that concerns me about the eclipses is normally one of the limits of the dragons we've been tracking, the shadow dragons, is that they cannot leave easily into the sky. The sun and bright light inhibits them. An eclipse would mean they could fly around freely during that day.
Yes, that is a problem. It does seem like most things are leading towards this eclipse, which means we do have a finite amount of time.
I think we will, as you guys are kind of thinking, pondering, wondering what this eclipse might mean. Really auspicious day. We will cut to a shot that is underwater. We can see some fishes swim by in this kind of dark, inky abyss. The camera kind of pans down a little bit. We've got some seaweed barnacles, coral, seaweed, some coral as they're kind of near a reef. To some of us, this is familiar. We can see the bones now picked clean of a dragon lying down in front of what seems to be a wall with a recess in it. We kind of watch. We can see, camera turns a little bit to follow it, a figure swimming almost imperceptibly, massive seaweeds kind of pushing out like an octopus's tentacles, maneuvering them forward. They're obscured, covered in this mass, except for their eyes, which kind of poke out, glowing slightly. This sort of deep reddish purple color. The figure swims forwards, and they place a tiny rock, far too small to fit into the recess fully. They place it nonetheless, as a small swirl appears in front of it. We hear, "Welcome back. What news of the upper world have you?" The Madge chuckle, that creepy laugh that Sammy does so well. They Aster, I believe they almost begin. That's where we're going to end today's session. Right.
Good. That's a bad thing.
Thank you, everybody, for playing today. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I saw Maddie in the chat for a little bit. I think I might have dipped out, but we will be back here next week to see what happens next. All right. I think that's just where we're going to end. Bye, guys.